بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. أما بعد. This is going to be a masterclass in lifestyle design, intended for students of knowledge bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Now, as we are taking our first initial steps towards a proper systematic study of Islam and the Arabic language, that is a vehicle towards understanding the Quran and Sunnah, we must make sure that we design systems and routines and habits in our lives such that they help us achieve our goals. Unfortunately, majority of the students of knowledge and majority of Tulab al-Ilm and even a lot of so-called ulama, they lack proper routines and habits in their lives, which prevents them from being as useful to the people as they could have been. They never utilize their full potential, subhanAllah. So this is supposed to be a masterclass specifically with that in mind, that our students, they should have a very clear goal as to what systems and routines and habits they need to have in their life to succeed. No matter where they are in the world, they can educate themselves, be enlightened, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, and then serve the community, serve the Muslims, serve the Deen of Allah Azza wa Jal, no matter where they are. So this masterclass is going to be a series of actionable takeaways for the students to start implementing the knowledge that we gain from this, inshallah, directly into their lives. All the details of the specific takeaways that we do mention in this, they will be discussed separately in detail in our Tajdeed Club newsletters, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, as we go through respective literature for each of the things that we discussed in this masterclass. For all practical purposes, this masterclass is just for actionable takeaways that you can start implementing from now, so that your journey with us on this program, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, it is guaranteed with the tawfiq of Allah Azza wa Jal, the success with which we hope we can make the change that we intend to make, inshaAllah. So if I was to ask you, who are you as a person? What constitutes you? What constitutes you as a human being? You can think of many answers. However, on a principle level, you are a combination of roughly 5 aspects, 5 things that when combined define you. Now, these things are observed by sociologists, psychologists to categorize you, whether you are sane or sensible, whether you are effective as a human being or not, whether you are healthy or not, whether you are a contributing member of the society or not. And so, according to Islam, when we want to analyze our place in the world and to define who we are, we can do that using these 5 criteria. We are as our minds and our souls define us, portray us, how we utilize our time, how our bodies are they healthy or not? Are they used in the service of Allah or not? How strong are we in family building, in community building? How strong are we in that? And then lastly, financially, how strong are we or are you as a contributing member to your community? These things essentially will form the crux of your existence in this world. And everything that you can imagine, any aspect of your life, that you can roughly, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala, place that in these 5 categories. And so in this masterclass, we're going to be looking at each of these categories separately and mentioning key principles and takeaways that will allow you to be functional on an optimum level in each of these 5 domains of life, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Right, so the first aspect of your life, your existence, that defines you as more than anything else, defines you as a person, is how well you have cultivated your mind and your soul. So this is the segment which focuses on your personal development. How well have you developed yourself as a human being in terms of your mental abilities, in terms of your knowledge, your learning, and your spiritual caliber? How well have you sort of crafted for yourself a routine which keeps you accountable to Allah Azza wa Jal and His religion and His Shariah? So your mind and soul is the first thing we're going to talk about in this masterclass, inshallah. As a principle, we know and we believe in Islam that the soul feeds the mind and the mind feeds the soul. Or what we mean by that is that the soul and its upliftment and its development is auxiliary to the development of the mind, and vice versa. The better your soul is, your ruh is, how deeply it is connected to Allah Azza wa Jal, will directly reflect in the presence of your mind and its sharpness and its alertness and its ability to acquire knowledge and reason and judge well and act wisely in this world. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Right, so the first thing we need to do as part of our lives is to commit to seeking Islamic knowledge consistently. Okay? Seeking Islamic knowledge consistently. Why do we say that? It's because there's no light that a person can have in his mind that he sees the world with, no purity he can seek that would allow him to discern truth and falsehood in this world, other than the aqidah and the manhaj that Islam teaches him. So Islamic knowledge, especially the ilm of tawheed and aqidah and manhaj, this is the ilm that every person should engage in teaching and learning about. So you as a human being, and more so as a Muslim, must commit to seeking Islamic knowledge consistently, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. And then as you're doing that, so this is more of an intentional step that you take, right? So set your intentions right, that you are going to seek knowledge, and then find ways to do that, meet that intention, inshallah. Okay, find halaqat close by, sign up to online programs, YouTube lectures, discussions with the ulama, go and see them, travel to meet ulama, seek their company, seek the company of righteous friends, and so on and so forth. Everything that helps you towards that goal, you are going to take those steps. So that's one of the first things that you're going to do. Do everything that it takes to feed the soul and the mind. So seeking Islamic knowledge, that's the first thing. We're not just about the mind here as Muslims. We are first and foremost the iman. As Muslims, we must prioritize our iman, and anything that does not benefit the iman is not beneficial. It's going to harm us in the long run. So that's the first thing. Secondly, as a practice, as a way of life, as a way of being and living, we must follow the sunnah down to the letter. Following the sunnah down to the letter means, in practical terms, that you are ought to implement the prophetic way of life, in your lives, and so that would encapsulate the routine of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his way of being. So this is where his adat become important: how he slept, how he woke up, the du'as that he made, the adhkar that he did, the way he behaved with his companions, and so on and so forth. So everything that we learn in the Sunnah, we must implement it in our lives. Okay? So as we learn, we implement. As we learn, we implement. As we learn knowledge, we act upon it. Okay? So al-ilmu bil-amal. Action is what truly glorifies knowledge, what truly gives it the status. Without action, knowledge is not beneficial. It is something that is condemned, right? It is not something praiseworthy in Islam. So your knowledge must always accompany action, and action must always succeed knowledge. طيب. So this is the first thing. So the takeaway that you're taking from this is that as a way of life, you must seek knowledge to better your minds and your souls, so that you're connected to Allah Azza wa Jal, you're connected to your Creator, you're connected to the purpose of life that you ought to live by. And as you do that, you follow the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, so intentions, set them right. Seek Islamic knowledge, so do the learning, and then thirdly, act upon it by looking how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam acted upon that knowledge, right? And that would lead you to understand, analyze his routine, how he woke up, how he slept, how he spent his day, how he ate, how he walked. Everything would fall into this. This is the foundation of your personal development, the development of your mind and your ruh, your soul. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. So that as a first thing, inshallah, alhamdulillah, once we've discussed that, let's move on now to some practical tips on how you should be approaching bettering yourselves as a human being in terms of your personal growth, your learning, your efficiency in life, and so on and so forth. The first thing you must do is you should always protect your mind from chaos. Anything that is chaotic can never reorganize itself into order. You must bear the responsibility of putting things into order, right? And a mind which is in order, it is best set to learn and use its full potential. Okay, so you must protect your mind from chaos. What we mean by that is, don't take on too much. Don't fill your plate with more than you can digest, right? Don't put your feet on many different boats lest you sink. So you can't really float on any one feet. So the point over here is that your mind must be organized, and the only way to organize it is to commit to the following principles. Number one thing is to never take on more than one target in each of the 4 domains of life. Now, of course, we've mentioned the 5 things that define you. Time is just a means of coordinating the rest of the 4, right? Time is how you coordinate, essentially. The development of your bonds in your family, your health, how you make money, how you work, and then of course your personal development. So time is just a dharf. It's just a place in which you organize the rest of the 4, and how to reuse the time, inshallah, we will discuss in the mind section. So the 4 domains, after you've learned to organize time well, are as follows: your personal growth, which is this section, mind and soul, then your health, then family, and then work, right? You must never try to the best of your ability to not commit to more than one developmental goal at a time, more than one. This is very, very critical. Most people make super big mistake when they approach personal development by taking too much at once, right? They have this course, they have that course going on over there, they have this book going on in the evening and this book in the morning and this and that. It's it's fawdawiyya. It's chaos, right? It's fawdawiyya, and you're not going to attain your goals. And by attaining our goals, we mean attaining absolute mastery. Inshallah, becoming a scholar, or at least a very strong talib al-ilm, a da'i, depends on you achieving mastery in each of the milestones that you take on that journey. So you must always commit to one thing at a time. And once you've sorted that out and it becomes a habit, a system, a ritual in your life that you don't have to think about, it becomes a second nature, then you can switch on to the next goal. And normally it takes about 2 to 3 months. I'm averaging out, these are not exact numbers, of course, because it differs for everyone, but it takes about 60 to 90 days for something to actually ritualize. It can, for some things, it can take less than that, and for some things, it can take more than that, close to 6 months, right? The point is that you must judge it for yourself by taking one thing at a time and doing it well and trying to achieve mastery in that one target in each of the 4 domains, and then judging whether this has become a second nature, more of a habit and ritual in your life that you don't have to think about it. It's something that you can carry on without any mental effort, right? Discipline is all about ritualizing and forming habits. Okay, if you don't do that, you're going to fail, right? So protect your mind from chaos, commit to one thing at a time, execute it to mastery, and then focus on the next target. This is the only path that we as human beings know towards mastery, perfection, bi'idhnillah ta'ala, and achieving one's goals. Don't spread yourself too thin, okay? So, for example, in personal growth, if we are talking about a mind and soul, then these are 2 things, right? So, if you focus on the mind, then just study one thing at a time. By focusing on the soul, you just focus on one developmental area of your spiritual well-being. For example, if you want to fast and you want to give sadaqah and you want to give, you want to stand in the night with qiyam and you want to pray your sunnah and you're not praying it already, then just start with one thing. Start, for example, in a list of priority. For example, if you're not even praying your prayers on time, let's just start with that. Pray your prayers on time. Pray them early, right, in their preferred time. Then once you've perfected it, make sure you're doing the adhkar after the salawat properly, right? And inshallah, once you've done that, then see if you're as a man praying in the masjid or not. Priority, right? Go to the masjid and pray there, right? And once you've done that, then you start focusing on the sunan and the rawatib. After you're praying the fard salah and you're doing its adhkar and you're going to the masjid, the thing after that would be, are you praying your witr, right? And once you're praying your witr, are you praying your sunan? And one sunnah at a time. Are you praying the sunnahs of fajr? Good. If once you are, then the next, and so on and so forth, right? So one thing at a time. One thing at a time. And likewise, in terms of health and family and work, inshallah, we'll focus on each of these when we come to that section. Right, so that's the mental framework. Committing to one thing at a time, one developmental goal in each of these domains. Now, how do you achieve that, practically speaking? I propose the rule of 7, 8, 3, 3, 2, 1. Right, so it's a number that you can sort of easily memorize. So 7, 8, 3, 3, 2, 1. Right, 7, 8, 3, 3, 2, 1. These numbers represent the hours, the breakdown of the hours of a day for an ideal day. Okay. Now, of course, the ideal day would differ from person to person, but you should see how I've broken this down and then try and implement this in your life, inshallah. The 7 represents your sleep, because your sleep is the foundation of your life. If you don't sleep, you're going to exhaust yourself, you're going to experience a burnout, and you will not be able to achieve anything, and you're going to die, because the sleep is your body's primary way of recovering and healing and growing and consolidation and forming memories and everything that you can, if there's anything that you could classify as the most powerful thing, that is sleep. Okay? So 7 represents your sleep. You should aim for at least 7 hours of sleep a day. This could be broken down into 7 hours straight, or as the Prophet ﷺ used to do, sleep after Isha, and then when your body wakes up naturally, allow it to wake up. And that normally is 5 to 6 hours for most people. Okay, when your body wakes up naturally in the night, just inshallah, let it wake up. And don't use alarms for this. Just wake up naturally, inshallah, and start your day then and there, right? At that time when your body has woken up naturally, don't use alarms, right? The Prophet ﷺ never used alarms. They didn't have alarms back in the day. And this is not that using alarms are haram, but it is not something that the science actually recommends. And even before science, right? Even if science had nothing to say on it, we know that the Prophet ﷺ woke up naturally, right? Science only confirms all of that today, that when you wake up in the middle of an REM cycle, which is a deep cycle, right, of your sleep, and your sleep is disrupted in that cycle, you're going to wake up not energized. You're going to be in a very miserable state. So that's not the best state to wake up in. So inshallah, 7 hours of sleep right after Isha, and wake up naturally, and then start your day. And then whatever time is left from these 7 hours, utilize that for your siesta, your qaylula, right? Your siesta, the mid or the noon, or the noon nap, basically, the midday nap. And this is of course normally done just before Dhuhr or right after Dhuhr, and it's not that long, right? Ideally between half an hour, 40 minutes roughly, inshallah. So that's number 7. Moving on to number 8 is the average human being will be working 8 hours a day, right? So this rule of 7-8-3-3-2-1 was actually suggested to me by one of my very close friends and elder brothers and mentors and teachers. And this reflects the life of an ideal man, right? Ideal person who is an average person, who's efficient in his life, inshallah, who's actually productive. So number 8 would represent the hours of work in a day, right? Normally speaking. You can't work for more than 10 hours a day, right? If you want to sustain yourself in the long run. Otherwise you'll experience a burnout, and you will not be able to continue for very long. This is for most people. Of course, there's a time and space for intense hustle, for a project, right? Spending the nights in that, and so on and so forth. Alhamdulillah, I've done that. Many ulama, they do it. But this is not your daily thing. Your daily routine has this rhythm to it. Okay, 7-8-3-3-2-1. 7 is asleep. Now 8 is your work. Of course, now work is different for different people. For me, that 8 represents just study and teaching, because I, as a teacher, I teach and I study, right? So we are tulab al-ilm, and we want to study. So if you could replace your job with studying and teaching, then alhamdulillah, there's no better life than that, subhanallah. So 8 represents your work. Now this could be for entrepreneurs, for business people, this could be a bit more, and for people who are working jobs, could be roughly 8 hours. And for people who are, yes, entrepreneurs, but they are living, they have a business which supports their lifestyle, they don't have to work that many hours, this 8 could be utilized for their studies. Okay, that is if their work allows for that. Okay, number 3, right? This number 3 over here, the first 3, it represents your salawat. Okay, roughly 2 hours for the fard and the sunan in the day, and then 1 hour for your witr and qiyam and so on and so forth. But roughly 3 hours if you pray properly and nicely, slowly, taking your time with khushu', inshallah. This is roughly a good time. 3 hours is a good time to spend on your adhkar, your salawat, your witr and qiyam, and shuruq and duha and so on and so forth. Okay, right. The next 3 represents your study. The time, even if you're working 8 hours and your job is not relevant to your studies, you still ought to give that time, inshallah, to your studies and personal development. And this is the time for your mind. The first 3 represents your soul, and the next 3, it represents your mind. Okay, and it doesn't mean that you're not developing your mind and soul in your sleep. Of course, the mind develops in sleep, and your soul, if you've done your adhkar properly, it's developing. And in the 8 hours of work, you're constantly remembering Allah Azza wa Jal, you're doing dhikr, you can give sadaqah in that time, you can do a lot of things in that time. So you're still developing your mind and soul. But to dedicate 3 hours to each of those things properly in a day, this is something that you ought to do, especially as a student of knowledge, inshallah. 2 hours is the ideal time. The number 2 after the 3 it represents the time that you should ideally give to your family, your parents, your wife, your children, in a day, inshallah, because your children have a haqq on you, your family has a haqq on you, so you should spend this time on them, inshallah. And then number 1 is the last one. 1, that represents the hour or the amount of hours you are supposed to give on your health, to your health. Okay? And this basically represents your exercise time, basically, right? And of course, for those people who have to cook for themselves, they're going to have to factor in time from their 8 hours of work, because, as work gives some lunch break, you're just going to cook for yourself. Or you can do meal prep on the weekend and then utilize that, inshallah, for your meals. So meal time is not factored in, because that is just part of the 8-hour workday. You just squeeze in meals around that time somehow. And then this 1 hour is dedicated to your exercise. You must aim for some exercise in this 1 hour. And inshallah, we'll speak about this in the body section, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Right, this is how you protect your mind from chaos, from a mental framework of just approaching one thing at a time, one target at a time, and achieving it with full force and intensity and strength and mastery. And then doing this in this time frame of 7, 8, 3, 2, 2, 1. This time framework, inshallah. This is to allow you to sustain yourself for the long run without crashing out. Without crashing, without experiencing a burnout, inshallah. Okay? And the best of the actions and the most beloved to Allah Azza wa Jal are those which are done consistently, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And trust me, you will achieve a lot. There's no one in the world that has achieved mastery in many, many things. But there are very, very many people, right? Hundreds and thousands of people who have lived, who have mastered many, many things, who did one thing at a time. Right? So doing one thing at a time is the secret, the key to all development, inshallah. Moving on, inshallah, we've touched on this, but the power of habit. If you struggle with procrastination, right, delaying things, not doing them on time, right, basically you need to harness the power of habit. And of course, this will be discussed in its proper place when we read literature that talks about habit building in our Tajdeed Club series. But just to touch on this, building habits, and as we've said, building habit takes roughly 2 to 3 to 6 months, right? Depending on different things and for different people. But you should aim to harness the power of habit. This is the only way you're going to beat procrastination. Habit translates to discipline, right? Habit translates to discipline. You shouldn't be aiming for, so discipline is not about brute force, forcing yourself to, do something at a time. No, it's you slowly build up habits so that you don't even have to think about doing things, right? It just happens. You're almost on an autopilot when it comes to doing those things. That is, to me, discipline. That is effortless discipline they should aim for, and that is only achievable if you harness the power of building strong habits in your lives. Okay, so how do you beat procrastination? Is by building habits. And how do you do that? 1, to ritualize everything, right? To always do a thing in the same way, always starting in the same way and finishing in the same way. And most of the successful writers and authors and ulama and sports people, everyone who's successful, they always they ritualize their practice. And by ritualizing, we don't mean a religious connotation, we mean a practical connotation, i.e., you always have a set of actions, a series of actions that you always do in that same order for that specific time, the same time every single day, the same place, the same environment, the same context, so that your mind associates doing that action with that first click, right? With that first thing that you start. For example, if I'm ritualizing my action of teaching, then the way I'm going to be approaching this is that right after Fajr, I'm going to take a half an hour walk, and that has primed me, and it has jumpstart my mind for the day. I'm going to come home, inshallah, take a shower, dress on my table, and start to journal my thoughts for the day, my goals for the day, what I'm teaching, and then prepare for my lesson and then deliver my lesson. So 5 things basically. So if I can do this every day for the next 5-6 months, this will become second nature to me, right? And so I would have ritualized everything. So working up till 11 a.m. starting from 3:30 for those almost 6.5-7 hours, right? That'll be inshallah autopilot. That'll be it will be breeze, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, once I've ritualized it though, right? And there will be no room for procrastination in there once I've ritualized these things. The moment I pray Fajr, my mind is already, will already be focused on executing that series of steps, inshallah. Okay. Now, that is not always enough. You need to constantly remind yourself of your purpose, why you're doing anything to begin with. I want you to imagine the adhkar from this perspective. People procrastinate because they forget, even after reminding themselves and holding themselves accountable, and always trying the best techniques and the best apps, they still fall into procrastination because they forget. And insan is from nisyan, right? It's from forgetfulness. And human beings, they forget, right? So the adhkar, and subhanAllah, a lot of the non-Muslims, they propagate this idea of reminding yourself about your purpose, about your goals, and in the morning, in the evening, and everything. There's rituals and practices that many successful non-Muslims practice, right? How did the Prophet ﷺ do this? How did he ritualize things? How did he, beat procrastination and laziness and all that? Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. You will notice how when from the moment the Prophet ﷺ wakes up and to the moment he goes to sleep, his entire day is focused around the 5 salawat, the prayers, and adhkar. And if you truly understood the meanings of those adhkar will serve the purpose of constantly reminding you of your purpose and how you have made the mistake of procrastinating and falling into sin and X, Y, and Z in your past. You're not going to do this now, right? So adhkar essentially are your constant reminders throughout the day. And once you've built them into your day, they'll become part of the ritual. They'll become part of the habit, right? A second nature to you. And they'll serve as a pillar for bringing you back whenever you sort of, go astray in your development. Now, once you're, committing to one thing at a time, and you're setting those targets, and you've structured your time into the 7, 8, 3, 3, 2, 1 manner, and you focus on building habits, and so you're building routines for that, you would be using some form of calendar just to visualize things, right? So once you've built that, inshallah, in your calendar, you need to stick to that routine. And we'll talk about time management in the next section, in the time section. But once you've built that, you need to stick to that routine. You need to hold yourself accountable to stick to that routine. Inshallah, we'll be introducing some mechanisms for our students to do this. One of them would be to share their Google Calendar as a screenshot with the rest of the students in the class, so that everyone else holds each other accountable. There will be group study sessions. We'll partner up students to each other, and then there will be accountability mechanisms served by myself, where I'll be holding you accountable to your weekly routines and questioning you on how you've done, how you've performed, inshallah. And then a weekly progress report from your side in your general study group, inshallah. Right? So these are some things that we're going to introduce as measures to make you stick to your routine, inshallah. But once you're done, you're not going to be in this program forever. What is important is that you hold yourself accountable to your routines, inshallah. Even after you're long gone from this program, bid'Allah ta'ala, and you're teaching others, you should teach them the same things. Now, one of the things that really stops the development of your mind and your ruh and this iman is, when you can't truly face your problems, you can't truly identify your fears or the problem areas in your development, right? Whether it be personal, mental, in terms of your intellectual or your spiritual development. So you need to use journaling, right, as a coping mechanism with those, as a means of defeating those hurdles and overcoming your fears. And by journaling, all we mean is you talk to yourself by writing. You channel your thoughts through your hand via your pen, in ink onto the paper, so you can see your thoughts, right? You can interact with your thoughts. And when you start, as a rule of thumb, everyone understands what their biggest problem is and what they need. They also know what they need to do to overcome that. But the only thing that stops them is not taking the step to achieve that that solution with clarity. So journaling helps you with that. Okay, this is called introspectional journaling. I'm a big supporter of this. The ulama used to do it. They have books on it, like Al-Fawaid by Ibn Qayyim. There's Sayyid al-Khatir by Ibn Jawzi, and other ulama. They've written many journals of that nature. They're published now, but back in the day, they were not of that nature. I mean, philosophers, they are known for this. Marcus Aurelius has his famous meditations, and other philosophers, Leibniz has his meditations, David Hume has his, and so on and so forth. So this is a common habit practiced by generations of scholars, thousands of years. So take your pen, start writing on the paper, start defining your fears, and then asking yourself, as you have this conversation with your mind on the paper, you will see how you will find solutions, and then all you need to do is just stick to those solutions, inshallah. So as you focus on one thing at a time, you are going to hit ceilings, and the way to break through those ceilings, those bottlenecks as we call them, is to find where the problem is, and then you craft a solution for that, and then you focus on that solution, and then you break through that ceiling to the next target, the next level. And you keep doing this until you've achieved mastery, bi-idhni ta'ala, okay? As a general principle, inshallah ta'ala, now that you've have these mental frameworks, right? One thing at a time, this routine, right? You're ritualizing things, you're placing in habits, the reminders for yourself, you're sticking to your routine, and you're journaling to overcome your hurdles, and you're surpassing each level to, inshallah ta'ala, on road to mastery. You need to have one key strategy for learning and learning fast, okay? And that is by creation. According to Bloom's taxonomy, which is one of the learning mechanisms and one of the trusted mechanisms, the highest form of learning happens when we create something, okay? So project-based learning is an example of that. Teaching is an example of that. Authoring a book, writing is an example of that, when you create something for someone else, right? So these are examples, right? So learn by creation, learn by creating, for others, inshallah ta'ala. And da'wah is one of the highest forms of this creation, where the sole reason for your learning is action, is to teach others, is to call others to this knowledge. That, so inshallah, ideally, what you're doing by your da'wah, other people will be attracted to the same lifestyle, the same thing, right, inshallah? So creation, projects. Craft projects that will make learning actionable from day one and make it relevant from day one, and will allow you to connect your knowledge to other things, inshallah ta'ala, and make it functional, bi-idhni ta'ala. And this is the most important learning advice, right? Turn everything into a project, bi-idhni ta'ala. And inshallah, throughout our studies, you're going to notice how we have set challenges, da'wah challenges, teaching challenges, that are there to serve as projects, right, inshallah, for you to start implementing your learning, inshallah. And of course, we'll cover learning techniques in a separate masterclass, a separate series during the course, inshallah. But and of course in the Tajdeed Club newsletter. But this is as far as the most important principles when it comes to the development of your mind and your soul, as the key actionable takeaways for you to take today, bi-idhni ta'ala. Right. So moving on to our second component that defines us as who we are, after the factor of how well we have developed our minds and our souls. Yeah, inshallah, when people think of us, they think of someone who is an intellectual, who have highly invested in themselves, they've learned, they've read books, they are rational, they spend time in developing themselves, and so on and so forth, right? The second component, inshallah, is your time. Now, of course, the time, as we've said, it's a dharf, it's a container in which everything else is placed. So this is how you coordinate between everything else, right? So when we talk about the aspect of time, what we're saying is, and what we're trying to target, is the element of how well you can use your time to maximize the output that you produce in the society or in your field, whatever the case may be, right? How well you use your time defines you as a person, how efficient and how effective you are. Okay? So we need to learn some actionable, important principles that will allow us to be functioning on an optimum level when it comes to our engagement with our time, how we utilize our time, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, okay? So now we've already talked about doing one thing at a time. We talked about this in the context of developing ourselves. Now, when we are talking about this in the context of how we better utilize our time, when you do one thing in one single instance, and your mind is not scattered, then you save your learning. The learning curve is much more steeper, so you learn way faster because you have the time then to focus for long periods of time, because you're not thinking of too many things, right? You don't have that subhanallah, that your body doesn't go numb thinking, X, Y, and Z things or 10 things to do. Where do I start? You don't have that syndrome, right? All you have is one thing, one task that you're going to tackle, and your day is filled with only a few things. So that way you manage your time really well. You tackle things really, really efficiently, and you achieve very, very positive results in each of those things that you tackle. So one thing at a time, it improves the efficiency of how you use your time. So your time works for you, not against you. When you spread yourself too thin, that you're working on so many projects at the same time, you can't achieve mastery in any of them. Jack of all trades is the master of none, right? So the best strategy for you to maximize the potential of your time is to do one thing at a time, okay? Just do one thing at a time and not spread yourself too thin, inshallah. Now, the second thing we want to look at is to understand the difference between the two types of gains we make in life, the two types of progress that we make in life. One is compounding, and the other is intensive, sort of crammed, one instance leap, and then we can sustain that with compounding gains. Now, let's explain that with example. If you were to exercise intensely for 10 hours, you will not be able to sustain that for the next day. You'll be tired, your body will be exhausted, right? So you will not be able to sustain that. You will not be able to continue. So exercise and health is gained with a slow and measured, consistent habit over a long period of time. So health, exercise, a good body, and so on and so forth, is gained over a long period of time. So it's achieved through a compounding gain metric, right? That's what you use. But when it comes to learning something, right, what is shown according to science is that if you immerse yourself in one thing for a long period of time and intensely do that initially, right, and once you've got to a very, very good level in that, then you sustain your development in that by continuing doing something in that field over a long period of time. Okay? So both of those fields, learning is more optimized when you focus it with an intensive gain mindset. So you immerse yourself in it, and then you learn so much, right? Because you focus on it with all your mind, for a very intense period, short period but intense period, and then you sustain that with some consistent actions that sort of continue to support that initial gain that you've made, versus some things that you can't really do intensively to begin with, right? Like exercise, like health, like diet, losing fat, all of these things are compounding gains. Like you make gains in progress in each of these domains over a long period of time. So when you understand this, you can organize yourselves accordingly, right? The activities, right, that are only properly achieved, and by achievement, of course, we mean achieving mastery in those things, and those things are only achieved through compounding. Then you approach learning those things or improvement in those things through compounding means. And things which are far more efficient for you to dive into, immerse yourself, learn them intensely, and then sort of carry that, work to, sort of sustain that effort that you've made and to continue making those gains. You approach that differently, right? So each activity has its own domain, essentially. Some activities, of course, they overlap. For example, the Russian wrestlers, they made a mark in the world in the Olympics. Of course, you had two camps. You had the American camp and the Russian camp in the wrestling world. The Americans, you'll have, just one-off wonder, once someone who's just genetically, a miracle, someone who just came forth and, was just, he was a work of nature, right? But then Russians are consistently good wrestlers. They make consistent gains, and they consistently win records, beat competitions, and so on and so forth. And that's a majority. It's a huge number of them. It's not a one wonder kid, right? And the answer for that is compounding. They don't approach wrestling or physical development in an intense manner as the no pain no gain mentality as we learn in the American part of the world, or that side. Compounding, what they do is they make their art, their wrestling, fun, right? So they enter the flow state where they're challenging themselves, but they're not hating it. It's not where they are experiencing so much pain that they want to give up, but just focus on on just keep going, enduring all that pain. No, when you achieve a flow state, you love what you're doing, and it's just a healthy amount of challenge, you grow. You learn so much more. You learn way faster, right? And then what they do is they do this slow, very, very. They never overtrain. Their bodies are never sore, unlike the Western the Western model of training, which is to maximize yourself. You break your muscles down properly, and then you give them a rest, and then they grow, and so on and so forth. The model that they follow is compounding, right? And this is far more effective. The greatest coaches now focus on compounding. So compounding is used for exercise, health, family, relations, kinship, your salawat, spiritual development. This is something that you can't really do, intensely in one go, right? And you can't possibly think of doing it in one go. If you tried, for those of you who have actually tried, say, sitting in i'tikaf, you'll remember how it's so hard to keep going with that intensity for the entire 10 days, that intensity of ibadah. Why? Because ibadah, of course, we're not used to that kind of ibadah in throughout the year. We just jump into it in Ramadan. But if you had built up to that, like the Prophet ﷺ had, then those 10 days, you could go, much more intense. Like the Russian wrestlers, they train nice and good and comfortably, with a bit of a challenge and a bit of a discomfort, but they enjoy it themselves in a flow state. They learn, and then when they get close to the training, the competition, they go all in, they train hard for a few weeks, and then they rest, right? There's a time and place for it. So it's the order is reversed. So we have to decide, inshallah. So this is the key principle. When you manage your time, allocate enough time for those things which should be learned intensely, and a menial amount of time which should be gained over time in a compounding manner, where their results add up over time. Okay, inshallah. So one thing that puts things into perspective is what we are to talk next, inshallah, which is to define your deep work strategy. Once you've defined a deep work strategy for yourself, as in how to approach your time and how to learn deeply in that time that you've allocated for your learning and your growth, for example, you'll be able to allocate time for compounding activities and intense activities accordingly. And this is called time blocking. Essentially, we'll talk about that in a second. So essentially, deep work refers to our ability to be able to work on one thing with extreme focus without any distractions whatsoever, right? And of course, this will be discussed, inshallah, in our literature review analysis that we do in the Tajdeed Club when the concerning books are studied, inshallah. But just as a key principle, something that you can take away, Deep work is something that you as a student of knowledge need to prioritize, right? Deep work is the only way the ulama, they became ulama and they produced work that they produced. Okay, so your week, your timetable, your schedule must have deep work sessions. Okay, so what do we mean by deep work? We've talked about that. Now, how do we approach this? There's 4 essential strategies for this, and there's 4 models essentially. So the strategies or the models are as follows. One is, which is called monastic strategy for deep work. Then there is the biphasal or bimodal strategy for deep work. Then there is the professor strategy for deep work, and then there is the journalist strategy for deep work. Ideally, we would be combining in all of these, and I'll explain. Monastic philosophy of deep work is where you have nothing else in the world. All you do is 2 things. You focus on your work, and you do activities that sustain that work. This is how most of the old authors in the past, and even some of the best-selling authors today, they do, especially fiction writers. They don't have phones. They don't have emails. The only way you can communicate with them is by sending them a written post through their to their post box, right? And all they do is they just spend their entire days, studying in blocks of time, and then other times they exercise, they spend time with the family, relax, eat, and then they sustain, right? So their work is just study and deep thought and thinking and writing, and that's how. So this is most suitable for someone who wants to be a scholar of the highest degree, and they want to. Of course, there is going to be an element as Muslims. It's not going to be exactly like that. There is going to be an element of community service, of teaching others in da'wah. But scholars, when they focus on writing, this is how. Imagine Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah in the jail. This is the deep work philosophy or strategy that he's approaching in that specific time. Imam Suyuti rahimahullah, he, towards the end of his life, after the age of 40, he cut off from teaching publicly, from giving fatwa. He retired to his house close to or next to the Nile, and he spent his entire days reading and researching and writing. So the last years, the end of his life, he focused entirely on teaching. This is the monastic, how the monks are in their monasteries. They just they spend all their time on their form of worship. So this is one way of doing it. That you cut off from everything else. You entertain no one and nothing, just your work, your family, your health, and you just you just repeat. Okay, the second thing is bimodal or biphasal, where you divide your year in 2 distinct phases. A phase where you have all your work and distractions, and then a phase where you don't allow any distractions. You migrate to a place, you leave your city, your house, whatever the case may be, and you move to a village, to a cottage, away from the people, away from everyone, and then you focus. You do that monastic kind of deep work, but only seasonally, right? That season is just for your deep work. Like in a modern day example would be Bill Gates. He has this thing called Think Weeks, and these are a week long or 2 weeks basically that he takes away from his work. He goes away to a forest and a cottage, and all he does is just read books and think. And it is as a result of these Think Weeks that majority and the major achievements of his life have been made. We go to the past century. We have the example of the famous psychologist and psychoanalyst called Carl Jung, and he was a very busy, practicing psychologist, a consultant, and he worked in his office in a city in Switzerland, I believe. And then very often he would take breaks. He would go away to his estate in the countryside, and he would be cut off from all distractions, from any meetings, anything. And it was there that he spent most of his time writing his masterpiece. He has transformed the study of psychology with the invention of the archetypes and other theories that have really transformed how we study psychology in this century, right? All of that came from that. So you can achieve the same level of deep work, and many great achievements can come out of this way of this strategy, that you have a phase where you study, so you work and you entertain distractions, and you allow yourself to be a hodgepodge of things. There is chaos and of some sorts, and then you have a time of the year where nothing is entertained. It's just for your thoughts. And inshallah, you'll notice how the way we structured our curriculum, we have 3 months off in the year roughly, as you'll notice inshallah over the year. These 3 months are essentially for that biphasal deep work for the students and for the teacher. These are your reading breaks and your recharge breaks, where you're going to be focusing intensely on your deep work, just reading and thinking, and inshallah coming to terms with your knowledge and your new self that you've become with that reading, and any thoughts that come your way in that time, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Okay, so that's your bi-model or biphasal form of deep work. But in any case, you can see how deep work is important, and deep work is the only way that you can produce anything in the world. Right. So the next thing is how the professors approach it. What they do is they have a 9 to 5, which is dedicated for deep work, and in that time as well, they approach things slightly differently. However, they have that time, and then outside that time, they schedule relaxation, sports, health, family, and so on and so forth, right? And of course, professors are different types. Some of them could do as the previous category, where they would have a semester where they would teach. They would place all of the lectures in that semester, and then they will have a semester free from any kinds of lectures, and they will just focus on their research. Okay, so that's an example of the second thing. But then you can have professors who just sort of divide their time. So every day they have 3 hours dedicated, or they time block their deep work sessions every day, right? So it's a compounding way of achieving deep work over a long period of time, right? However, it's less effective than the first two types of strategies. Okay, and you can think of this as a week. Let's say, for example, you have 7 days in a week, 5 days for work, and then 2 days for a weekend, right? In the 5 days, what you can do is you can save 5 hours for my study, 2 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the evening, whatever the case may be, or 3 hours, let's say. And then on the weekend, that's your deep ways, right? So you schedule, so you can essentially combine a week. You can combine these 3 strategies in a week. How? One, you break your week into 2 portions, 5 days and 3 days. Or you can do 4 days of work and 3 days of relaxation. So 3 days of intense deep work, of undistracted deep work, and then the 4 days or 5 days of work where you have structured deep. You still have deep work in that, but it's structured, and you do allow distractions outside those structured hours, right? So you combine these 2 strategies. And then in your work time, during your work hours, you approach a no distraction strategy by eliminating any checking emails, any messages, responding to any messages, checking social media, whatever the case may be. So all of that time that you've blocked for your deep work, right? That you sort of become the person who is living a monastic kind of life, where they're not going to be distracted, like Imam Suyuti, right? But you're just approaching it in a smart manner, where you're still in the middle of all the distractions, but you allow nothing to distract you. Okay, so that's the week. So you schedule deep works in those 4 days or 5 days, and you allow distractions, and you allow meetings with people, and you allow gatherings, seeing people, going to a dinner party at a family, at a family's place, whatever the case may be, right? You allow all those entertainments as well as at the same time where you focus on your deep work. So, but that deep work is limited. However, then you have 2 or 3 days in the weekend, or as a weekend, where you're just going to focus on your work. طيب? So you do everything on those 4, and then separate those 3 days in the week. If you did that, 1 day a week of deep work over 7 months is a whole month of deep work that you've done, right? So 2 days a week, that's 2 months, every 7 months of deep work, right? So every 7 months, or almost half a year, you've spent so almost 3.5 months you spend on deep work, just if you spent your weekends properly. So managing time in that manner. Right. And then the fourth technique is the journalist manner. The journalist approach of deep work is, let's explain by example. Journalists, as we know, are busy from dawn till dusk. They have to work super long hours to gather the most interesting news, and then write up articles about it, and then publish, and edit and then publish. All of that happens in a single day. How do they find time to actually think properly and then write and then publish and things? It's done basically by finding whatever time they can find in the day. Even if it's 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes, they just block out all distractions and just focus for that time on achieving that, and then they go on to the next hunt, gathering more data, X, Y, and Z, and then they come back and do that session for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever the case may be. If they find longer than that, brilliant. If not, then they just move on. And in any case, this is the 4 ways how you approach deep work. Now, inshallah, I would suggest that you do all 4, but the way you do this is, 1, your year is divided into 9 and 3. So 3 months are roughly going to be off, and then 9 months you're going to be studying with us, right, in the live session. And then you'll have homework and readings to do in the other 3 months. So those 3 months will be the biphasal way of deep work, where you're going to be spending a lot of time on your education, and you have no classes, so you have a lot of that time free for your own education. So if you're spending 6 hours a week, in those weeks where when you don't have class, you'd have that time for yourself, inshallah. So if you use those 3 months properly, inshallah, and you manage them well, you can squeeze in a lot of study, mashallah, a lot of deep work, a lot of self-development, a lot of learning, bi-idhnillah ta'ala. And so when we now look at the 9 months of our actual study time, then 9 months essentially, divided into weeks, right? So each week, let's just focus on each week, and then the way you divide a week will sort of add up over time, over those 9 months. So the way I recommend is that everyone normally who works, they have a weekend, right? They either have 2 days or they have a day. Ideally, what should happen is you should treat the days when we are studying as days when you're working, right? So because we are studying on a weekend, you can treat those as your work days and not a weekend, right? So you can, let's say, study in the morning, revise a bit, and then spend the rest of the day, for example, doing other things with your family and whatnot. Now, the rest of the days in the week, you can treat them as your weekends, the 5 days of weekend, right? You can work in the day, yes, you have work in the day, but you have the mornings free, right? So you can wake up after Fajr and squeeze in 3 to 4 hours of study every day, right? So if you could have that kind of structuring, right? You block that time study of deep work, study time of deep work for the 5 days or 4 days. Let's just stick to 4 days. Let's just keep the Fridays off for ibadah and Jumu'ah and whatnot. Let's just relax on Fridays. But Mondays to Thursdays, 4 days, block out the mornings for your intense study, deep work. 3 to 4 to 5 hours, depending on how much time you have at hand, right? And then, of course, on the weekends, you are studying, so that actually counts as your study time anyway. If you do that, then you've essentially, in the 9 month period, you will have spent the 9 months, so roughly 8 months out of the 9 months, you would have spent studying. So that's a lot of time you squeezed out of that time, out of that limited time. Otherwise, if you were taking 2 days off a week, you will miss out on roughly 2.5 months of study. But here you're missing roughly 1 month and a quarter, roughly, right? So, inshallah, what we're saying is now, to summarize, structure your 9 months as such where you have blocked time for deep work, inshallah, okay? And if in the week you could afford 2 complete days off of any work or any family commitment, whatever the case may be, right? Then just focus on your studies for throughout that day, the 8 to 10 to 12 hours on that day. Just study and no distractions and whatever the case may be. If you can do that, brilliant. If you can't, then do as I've said. Just block out time every morning for your studies. Every morning, a few minutes, a few hours, or a couple hours, or an hour, half an hour before bed. Something in the day, as a journalist would do. To squeeze in half an hour, 20 minutes, 30 minutes in the day. A very dear friend of mine, mashallah, very advanced in knowledge, but he did all of that in the UK while working 8 hours a day at a job. How he did that was exactly that. He had certain months off. He studied in that. Then during the year, when he's working intensely 8 hours a day, sometimes, traveling to work, sometimes working from home, he would dedicate his mornings, 3 to 4 hours in the morning. Then 1 hour at work, while eating lunch, he would study. And even while he's at work, while he's doing, and he's not, he doesn't have any more work to do, he has 20 minutes, 30 minutes off at hand, he just studies in that. And then when he comes home, he spends some time with the family, teaches his daughter. He's mashallah, his daughter has memorized a few Adzana, Allahumma barik, and he spends quality time with his family. And then towards the evening, about 3 to 4 hours again in the night, he studies, right? That's how he's built himself, may Allah bless him. So this is something that is very, very achievable if you really put your mind to it. On the weekends, then he really doubles down on his study time, right? He spends crazy amounts of hours on the weekend just to study. His family knows that, they respect that, they don't distract him. And each and every one of you can do that. They can craft out a timetable where they can implement these deep work sessions. A few months where they are away from their major family commitments, and they're just studying for 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day. Good. Then during the year, they have at least 2 days a week where they're not committing to anything other than their own studies. And then 5 days they allow classes, they allow family time, they allow distractions, work, and everything else. Right? 2 days a week, they just study. If you could do 2 days a week of deep work every week, and then have extra 3 months off, that is a lot. That is almost 5 months of study time that you've just taken out of your year, even if you're working 8-hour days, subhanallah, right? So this is something to keep in mind. So if you approach dividing your time in this way, you'll be a lot more efficient with your time, and the time will work for you as opposed to you working for your time. Right, so this brings us to the time blocking. We've mentioned this again and again, but time blocking essentially is where you go on your Google Calendar and you mark out X number of hours, or you visually sort of place the amount of hours for different activities on the calendar so you can see what hours, what time is for which activity. If you did that, inshallah, it'll be very easy for you to visualize things. And since you're doing one thing at a time, there's not very many things to do in a day, maximum 3 to 4 days, 4 tasks in a day. You're doing some exercise, that's going to be consistent, so you're going to mark that out in your calendar. That 1 hour every single day that you're giving for your health, right? That's there every day in the calendar. Good. Right. The time for your prayers, mark that in the calendar. It's there, mashallah, every day, every single day. Good. Done. Then some days you're going to be working, so mark that time there when you're working on the calendar in a different color. Do that. Right. And on that calendar, then you'll see how much time you have left. Then you can see, okay, I can do 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening, 6 days a week. Just mark that on the calendar. When are you going to spend your time with your family? Brilliant. Do that. And then depending on the kind of work you do, if you work part-time, brilliant. Anytime that's over, extra, just start studying. If you're like myself, whose sole job is to teach and learn, then you have your entire day to yourself, depending on your circumstances, family commitments, whatever the case may be. Sometimes there's emergencies, but, generally speaking, inshallah, you have a lot of time, inshallah. So time blocking, visualizing that on a calendar. Google Calendar is the best. I've used that for many years now. It's very, very effective at helping you see where you're, and then you can sort of have the widget, the calendar widget on your phone that allows you to see sort of your day on a scroll. You can see, okay, so this hour is for this work. Let's get to that. And so very quickly, once you've time blocked this calendar of yours, you start acting on it. will become a habit of sorts, and you won't even have to use this, inshallah. Okay, so while we have defined our deep work strategy in this way, inshallah, where we actively seek times and durations of time where we work for long days of time, and then we actively seek, while we're busy, seek hours dedicated for study, and then when we are busy, we find opportunities to learn and grow. 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 15, 10, whatever the case may be. I finished some of the hardest and foundational books in grammar and other sciences by just doing 10-minute deep sessions with my teachers, 10-minute, 15-minute sessions. Subhanallah. So you can do a lot. So just actively seek to define your life in these four ways. Just divide your life, your week, your time, your year, in these 4 types of deep works, inshallah. Okay, and this way you'll be able to max out your productivity. You'll be able to gain a lot more from your time, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And when you time block all of that, you'll be able to see, visualize very clearly which of the things are going to be gained over time, so compound, and which of the things are going to be your main focus for the time, which is going to be your studies mainly. And inshallah, we're going to be approaching our studies in an intense manner anyway. We're going to be studying one thing at a time. So all of your 3 to 4 hours a day are going to be time blocked for that every single day. Say you're studying 4 to 8 o'clock, or you're studying something like, let's say something like 6 to 10, whatever the case may be, inshallah, just time block that consistently so that you know that time is just for yourself and your study. If it doesn't work, then just make sure on the calendar you have those 4 hours or 3 hours marked, inshallah, for your study 6 days a week. Okay? And then lastly, to gain back your time, you must really, really renegotiate your relationship with technology. We normally use technology for multiple reasons. You need to sit with your journal and write down the exact reasons why you use internet for. So the root cause of all distraction and procrastination is our connection with the internet. If the internet is cut off, we're really left with some very, very powerful tools that we can learn with, right? Unless we have games that we play, which is very harmful for you anyway, so you shouldn't be wasting time on it. But let's just assume you don't have games on your phone and social media and everything works with the internet. Let's say you could just cut off the supply of your internet a few days, for the few hours a day. Or let's assume it in this way. Think, just list down the activities. Why do you need internet? Why do you as a person use internet, right? List down those activities. Okay? And then see if I use internet for communications, if I use it for social media, if I use it for my work, list down, in my experience, is roughly 4 things. It's either work, which is that you research and you read and you learn, and then you have to constantly look up things. So that is one type of work. And even most knowledge workers, people who work in companies which are heavily reliant on email and communications and research and design things, which where you need internet basically, right? Things like that. So you need that internet for your work. That's one thing. Second is communication of any type: WhatsApp, Telegram, email. All of that is one thing. Right, then there is social media. You use social media just to, whatever the case may be, I'm not sure, but waste time. It normally is the case, but you use that, time, internet for social media. And then sometimes you use the internet for things which are family related, right? You have to speak to your family. Sometimes, because for me, my family is all over the world, so I have to fit in that time. So, other than these 4 cases, I don't really need internet. So, what do? I schedule these things in my calendar. I time block activities. So, in my calendar, I have a time block where I get on a Zoom meeting with my entire family for that time. So that's how we connect. And outside that time, I don't need to use internet. That's one. Secondly, my internet is only required when I'm teaching, right? And mostly I don't need internet for my work because I have books. I have a library that I can use. If I didn't, I'll just have that time. Then I schedule that time for internet where I can just look up books, download them on my computer, and then even if I don't have an internet, I have those books downloaded. I can just continue my research and my study with that, right? The point being, you as a person, you are supposed to list down the reasons why you use internet for. Forget using your phone and quitting your phone. That is something secondary. The number one reason why people get distracted is because they are connected to the internet. So disconnect yourself from the internet. A few ways to do that is to turn off your Wi-Fi modem, right? Your Wi-Fi router. Turn that off. Connect this. Unpack. Pack it up. Put it in the cupboard or something. Just take those extra measures. Do that, and once you need internet, normally it's enough for you to just disconnect it, but turn off the internet modem. But that's it. But if you want to go the extra length, and it is helpful sometimes, just pack everything up, disconnect the wires, pack everything, and put it in the cupboard. And then in your calendar, you'll have a time in the day where you'll be responding to communication. You're not going to be available to people every single time, every single minute. You're going to have roughly half an hour twice a day where you are going to log into your social media, WhatsApp, Telegram. So social media, not necessarily, the communication media, WhatsApp, Telegram, email. Primarily, these are the things. Just get on. Half an hour is the block time. You don't need half an hour. If you don't have any emails, just move on to everything else that you need to check to respond to anyone. And it might take 3 minutes, 4 minutes. And if you don't have anything to respond to, if you have nothing to communicate to others, turn off the things, turn off the internet, and get back to work. Right? Likewise, when you're not teaching, so in my case, if I'm not teaching, I don't need internet, so I just turn it off. On the odd days when there is no internet to begin with, there is a problem. But while I have internet and I'm not teaching, and I don't need internet for my research, for looking up things, then I'll just turn off the internet and I just am with myself. And it's a sublime feeling to be disconnected from the internet. It really turns on a greater sense in you that you can only experience this. People back in the day, they didn't have any of these distractions, so they achieved great deep work, much more often, and they had minds crafted for that deep work because they didn't have distractions. So once you've successfully negotiated your use of technology, you can start experiencing those same amazing results in your mental capacity. You start to focus. You get razor sharp focus. You start thinking deeply. You start thinking in ways that people don't think. You start thinking outside the box. You start being more critical. You start being more creative when you're disconnected from technology, from internet. Sorry. Then with your phone, phones are more distracting because they are handy, and it's very easy to with the fingerprint and or face scan. You can very easily access them. So the best thing is negotiate your phone. The second thing to negotiate now is to list down the reasons why you use your phone for. For a lot of people, a phone is not necessary. Okay, a phone is a smartphone, that is very, very unnecessary, or at least its features of communication and social media. But a smartphone is anything that you can almost do on a phone. Anything you can do on a phone, you can almost do it on a laptop as well, with some limitations. And for that reason, you may still keep a phone, inshallah, but negotiate its usage. List down why you use your phone, for what reasons you use your phone for, the activities that you do, the apps that you use in the phone for that purpose, anything that is beyond that purpose. So you delete those apps. Okay. Second, if you need your phone for X, Y, and Z reason, and you don't need the phone for anything else other than that, then when those X, Y, and Z things are not being done, your phone shouldn't be with you. The phone should be locked away in a cupboard. Okay? They shouldn't be with you. Right? And you should only allow yourself to touch your phone when, let's say, you have to answer some communication, answer an email, answer a WhatsApp message, whatever the case may be. But as we said, you've already time blocked that. Right? You've already time blocked that. Inshallah. So open your journal and start negotiating your use with internet and your phone. Laptops are mostly harmless. because they're bulky, they're not as handy, they're not as comfortable. So it's easier to it's easier to avoid distractions on a laptop. But with phones and tablets, it's much more easier. So negotiate your use in that manner. Be very, very mindful of why you use a certain technology for, and then when you need to use it. Do you need to use it? Does that technology need to be on you 24/7, or can you just have that technology on you for like 5-10 minutes a day, and that's it, right? More often than not, that is the case. We don't need our phones on us 24/7 all the time. We don't need that. So inshallah, when you do that for yourself, this exercise for yourself, you'll see how inshallah you can maximize how much time you regain inshallah from your life. طيب. So as a summary, define your deep work strategy according to the principles that I've described, okay? And of course, because you are the judge of your life, better than I. So apply those things, apply those strategies in your life as best as you deem it fit. Then, according to that, and of course, you have the goals in the 4 goals that you're going to be focusing on, right? In your personal, the 4 domains of personal life. Those 2 things combined, a deep work strategy combined with your goals, right? Put all of that in a time-blocked calendar, and then negotiate your use of technology in the way I've done, in the way I've told you to, inshallah. And that way you will inshallah, bi'idhni ta'ala, you will be using your time, better and more efficiently than 99.9% of the people in the world. And once you've done this, the rest of your life will fall in place, inshallah. You'll see rocketed results in your personal development, in your mind and soul, in your family, in your health, and everything else, inshallah. You'll be more creative. You'll become a fast learner. You'll be more critical, and you'll enter flow state more. The learning will become more enjoyable, and inshallah, this will be something that will compound over time. Bi'idhnillah ta'ala. Right, so bi'idhnillah, moving on to our next topic, which is your body. Now, your body is the vehicle which carries you as a human being, right? So your body may make or break your career as a student of knowledge. And of course, living a fulfilling life, a healthy life, is the foundation of any progress that you can ever imagine making in your lives. Okay? So your body is very, very important. Now, once you've established a good habit framework, a good mindset on personal growth, and you know how to manage your time well, you've structured yourself, inshallah, in that manner. Let's discuss how you can optimize your bodies to extract the maximum benefits from it for your search of knowledge, for your ibadah, for serving Allah Azza wa Jal, and serving His Deen. There's 3 cornerstones to a healthy body. A body that is functional, a body that is optimal, a body that is primed for everything that you can imagine doing, from physical activity to spiritual activities like ibadah, and even mental activities like studies and intense academic work. So the 3 cornerstones for your body are sleep, diet, and exercise. And all 3 need to be incorporated into a lifestyle that you live, okay? So that it becomes second nature. So going back to our habit building, all of these things need to become parts of our lives so that we don't have to think about them actively. We don't have to pay much attention to it. It becomes part of our, beings. It becomes second nature to us. We don't have to think about a healthy diet or what do we do this week and that week. It becomes second nature to you. So let's talk about sleep first. Now, sleep is king. Most people ignore their sleep a lot, right? And sleep is, if anything, right, if your diet is perfect, exercise is perfect, but you are sleep deprived, you're going to live a very miserable life. You're not going to be working at your optimal capacity, right? So sleep is the priority. Sleep is king. This is the most important cornerstone that you need to fix in your life. And if you look at the life of the Prophet ﷺ, sleep is prioritized for many reasons, of course, but in many important ways, right? And inshallah we'll talk about this. But when we say we want to sleep well, and sleep is king, sleep is priority. We don't mean it in a very scientific, hodgepodge, neuroscientist manner. No. We mean this according to the Sunnah. We want to optimize our sleep according to the Sunnah, how the Prophet ﷺ slept, because he is the model. He is a role model. And subhanAllah, as we observe his life and we observe his sleep routine and everything, we understand that, subhanAllah, even today's most advanced research, the most up-to-date research, confirms his sleeping habits and his daily life habits to be the most optimal for a human being, subhanAllah. So we go back to our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So, as we said, living according to the Prophet alayhi salam's sunnah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, right? Down to the letter. So the Prophet ﷺ, how did he sleep? We need to pay attention to that, and we need to implement that down to the letter. Every single thing needs to be done. The Prophet ﷺ, after Maghrib, we know that according to the hadith, we are commanded to turn off the lights, right? When the night falls, turn off the lights. Start moving away from screens. Start moving away from blue light. Anything that is not natural, right? That would allow the circadian rhythm to kick in, and will induce sleep, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala, naturally in the body. And this is a very healthy and natural and sunnah way of tackling sleep deprivation, insomnia, and many of the things that people encounter in their sleep patterns, subhanAllah. So moving, inshallah, starting from Maghrib, start dimming the lights, keep your children inside, lock the doors, so you're priming yourself towards, for the night. You're preparing yourself for the night, inshallah. Then you pray your Isha. Anything that needs to be done, you've eaten before Isha, way before Isha, right after Maghrib, or just before Maghrib, you've eaten, inshallah. And as you've eaten, you have 2.5, 3 hours until you go to bed to digest the food and everything. So, inshallah, this is a very good way of moving towards that sleeping time, inshallah. So you've done all that. Now Isha kicks in. You pray your Isha. Now the sunnah is to sleep right after Isha. The Prophet ﷺ, he disliked talking for unnecessary reasons after Isha. If there is a need for some specific reason, like education, teaching, and discussion that needs to happen with the Sahaba, then he would do it, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But other than that, this is as a routine, as a norm. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he would go to sleep straight away after Isha. Now, of course, you have to implement the adab of sleeping. And inshallah, this can be easily found in the books of adab and adhkar, like Hisn Muslim. The Prophet ﷺ, he would do wudu before he went to bed. And this wudu is separate from the wudu of Isha. Even if you are in the state of wudu, you have to do your wudu separately for sleeping, right? Because this wudu is for the prep of sleep that you're about to enter into. So sleeping, inshallah. You do your wudu, you come back, you dust your bed. Very, very important. You dust your bed properly, right? You make your bed, you dust your bed, and then you lie down. طيب. You read your adhkar, all the adhkar of the night, adhkar of sleeping, ayat al-kursi, right? And then the mu'awwidhatayn, the قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ and قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ, and blow it on your body. And then you sleep on your right side, right? All the science, the research talking about the best sleeping posture confirms sleeping on the side is the best for your body, right? Now, sleeping on the right is the sunnah way of supporting yourself in the sleep, supporting your spine and your posture, inshallah. It's the best way you can do, inshallah. Sleep, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ, he would sleep on either the floor or his, as we call it, the four-legged, bed, which is made of wood, for example. It's not, comfortable mattresses and anything beyond what the Prophet ﷺ lived is unnecessary and israf in life, and we should avoid it. Nowadays we have this epidemic of people, investing hundreds of thousands of pounds in sleep tech, sleeping mattresses, controlling the body temperature and this and that. This is not ideal. You're not going to be facing. You're not going to have ideal circumstances for sleep wherever you go. So you must learn to sleep in every kind of circumstance, inshallah, and be able to cope with it. And this is how the Prophet lived. His bed was not the 1,000-pound mattress that people are buying nowadays, right? He's not, his duvet is not temperature controlled, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These are things that did not exist, and we don't need them as human beings to function to our best abilities, inshallah, to have the best sleep of our lives. We don't need any of this high tech. It's a waste of time, it's a waste of money, and it's israf. That money should be spent on our brothers and sisters who are poor, who are in need, and especially those who are war-struck. So now you've done your adhkar, you dusted your bed, you've done your wudu and everything, you're on your bed, and you're lying on your right side. The Prophet ﷺ, he did not use a very big pillow, or rather not a pillow, sometimes or no pillow at all. What I mean is, the Prophet ﷺ, if he had a pillow, it was a small pillow, or he didn't have a pillow at all. What he would do is he would use his arm, the right arm, as a pillow. He would place his hand on his under his head to hold his support his head in sleep. SubhanAllah. Why is that important? SubhanAllah. As I said, following the Sunnah down to the letter is super important. SubhanAllah. One of the modern epidemics, problems that people face is a spinal dysfunction, where the spinal discs around the neck area, right, and when you sleep, it puts pressure on the lower spine. These spinal discs can become damaged, right? It can over a long period of time, of course, and it can cause numbness. It can cause you can lose movement in your arms. This happened to my father, in fact. SubhanAllah. And the doctor recommended that they don't sleep with a pillow. They sleep without a pillow to fix this issue. So sleeping with high pillows and soft, comfy, big pillows, it's not recommended. If you want to have a pad under your head, just use a small, inlined pillow, or some soft, a soft cushion, a small cushion that supports your head, and just enough that it doesn't lift it too high, that it takes the spine out of its natural curvature. Inshallah. So sleeping on the side, supporting your head with your hand or your arm on the right hand, is the best and the optimal way of sleeping. The Prophet ﷺ, he forbade us from sleeping on our bellies, because this inhibits your breath. Of course, astaghfirullah. Before that, he forbade us from doing this because he said Allah Azza wa Jal does not like a slave sleeping on his belly. He kicked one of the Sahaba awake, and he told him not to sleep like that. Right? This is the primary reason Allah Azza wa Jal does not like it. Now, we as human beings, as inshallah, we can think of some wisdom behind that. One of the scientific wisdoms behind it is that it inhibits your breath. Okay, so when you inhibit your breath, it of course it detriments the quality of your sleep. That's one of the reasons. The second is it puts unnecessary pressure on your important organs, right? It puts the weight of the lungs and the bones. The prior organs onto your heart and your stomach so this is not something that is ideal for a body to be sleeping in that position, right? Plus, it is very arrogant for someone to sleep in that manner. It's not how an abd, a slave, sleeps. You'll never see a slave sleep like that. Subhanallah. So there's no aj. It is not the representative of an ajiz person, a person who is ajiz, someone who is humble, down to earth, right? And there's many other reasons that you can think of, but the point is, the takeaway is, don't sleep on your bellies. And there's many wisdoms, as we've mentioned. Sleep on your right hand side, support your head with your hand or your arm, right hand arm, and not a big pillow. If you want to use a pillow, just use a small cushion and nothing more than that. Sleep on the floor. The best thing. Stick to the floor. That's the best thing you can do. As a lifestyle design move, is to stick to the floor in your house, inshallah. And I'll speak about that towards the end of this video, this section, inshallah. So the Prophet ﷺ then would sleep, okay? And of course we know Allah Azza wa Jal protected him in his sleep with the angels and so on and so forth. And then let your body wake up naturally. If you sleep early enough, you will wake up early enough, inshallah, and you will wake up naturally. Don't use alarm clocks. Leave alarm clocks, right? unless there's a very, very, important reason you need to wake up at a specific time. If that's not the case, inshallah, and that is not going to be the case for most people, just let your body wake up at a natural time. Naturally, just let it wake up. Okay, inshallah. Let it have all the deep sleep cycles, the REMs, which are important for a good quality sleep, inshallah. Okay. Then, of course, from the tales of the Sahaba did not like the sleep to be too comfortable, because it would mean that they will not wake up in the morning or in the night for tahajjud, for praying qiyam. So something to take away from that is to not use too heavy of a duvet that would make you super comfortable in, super warm in sleep, for example. That would, mean that you will not wake up, right? And then in the summer, try and sleep in a place which is a bit cooler, but not too cool that it makes you too comfortable that you sleep. So just try and find always a middle environment, a balanced environment for your sleep. When it's cold outside, don't get too warm. Okay, allow some discomfort to remain, inshallah, and the body will sleep naturally, inshallah. Right? If you, of course, hit the extremes, you're gonna miss your sleep. But if you remain balanced, when it's cold outside, yes, you take on a duvet, you wear warm clothes, but you don't get too warm, lest you get too comfortable and not wake up naturally for you, and you sleep longer. طيب? But in any case, Allah Azza wa Jal knows that you've slept, and you've woken up naturally. You're not using alarms, so Allah Azza wa Jal will forgive you, as was the case, with some of the Sahaba who did not wake up for Fajr for some time. And Allah Azza wa Jal, the Prophet he made an excuse for them, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, so sleeping in a natural way, waking up naturally, not using alarm. And when you wake up, again the same thing, building the habits of the adhkar. Read your adhkar of waking up. Okay, inshallah. Adhkar is super important. Again, the first thing you do is to remind yourself of your purpose. That's the first thing. You wake up, you rub your face, wipe the sleep off your face, inshallah. And one of the wisdoms behind wiping your face when you wake up is that when you sleep, your face puffs up, right? And when you wake up and you wash it and you rub it, the puffiness and the mild swelling, it goes away. Okay. Then you brush your teeth. So the Prophet, كان يسوق فاه بالسواك, right? He used to brush his his teeth and rubs the siwak in his mouth. So all around, when you brush, the etiquettes of brushing again are that you don't just, and of course science is just telling us these things, but the Prophet, you see him that he would not just brush his teeth, he would wipe the siwak on his tongue and the sides of his mouth. He would clean everything, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One of the first things he did was to wash his hands, right? So getting up, the dhikr, wiping the face, getting up, inshallah, washing the hands, and then the siwak, and then wudu, and then you enter into salah if you have time before fajr. And if you don't have enough time before fajr, just do wudu. And even if you find a minute to just pray one rak'ah, just do that, inshallah, before your fajr. And then you pray fajr and don't sleep after fajr. So this is essentially the night routine. Okay, you have to build this into a system, and you have to stick to this, inshallah, one thing at a time. You don't have to do all of this at once. Just start implementing one thing at a time. As we've said, one thing at a time, inshallah. Okay, one area improvement, master it, then move on to the next, add the next thing to it, inshallah. Then the Prophet would not sleep. He would continue his functions after fajr. He would serve his community, and then around duha he would slightly delay his breakfast. I mean, imagine someone who wakes up at 7 o'clock and they have their breakfast straight away. Science actually recommends that we delay our breakfast, right? We delay eating and taking in caffeine, for example, right? We delay that. And the Prophet, naturally, he would go to the salah, he would tend to his community, and then he would talk to his sahaba, and around duha, he would come and ask for food, and if the food was available, he would eat. If it wasn't, then he would say, Ana sa'im, he would just fast for the day. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You can see the perfection of this routine. You can see the perfection of the sunnah. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right. Then towards the noon time, just before dhuhr, the Prophet would come home and sleep for a bit, right? Do a siesta. And the siesta again is very short. It's not too long. It's about half an hour to 40 minutes, as we can judge from the sunnah. Then sometimes it could be a bit longer, but the Prophet would wake up at the adhan normally, or the Prophet would sleep after Dhuhr sometime and then wake up, very soon after that, as the hadith of Safiya it mentions the Prophet would sleep at his aunt's house after sleep, and she would collect his sweat, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is essentially sleep in a nutshell. These are the two times for your sleep, right? I highly recommend that you do have some form of siesta in the day. Modern neuroscience confirms this, sleep science confirms this. It's just super, super important that you have this habit of doing a siesta in the day, inshallah. For the warmer climates, it is natural. The body stops functioning when it's too hot. And people in the warmer climates, in parts of Arabia, in the desert, in Africa, in Pakistan, where I'm from, you can feel the body just switching off around noontime. Like you can't function that well. So the Prophet is, again, naturally is from the climate, so he sleeps. But even in the colder climates, you should give your body the haqq, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. So that is your sleep in a nutshell, down to the letter, following the sunnah, inshallah, implementing in our lives. That is how, we want our sleep to be, right? In exact measure, exactly like that, right? In the footsteps of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So don't ignore your sleep. Sleep is king. Prioritize it. And as we said in the 7-8-3-3-2-1 rule, the first 7 is your sleep. All right. I mentioned 7. Of course, the doctors have said that anything between 7 to 9 hours of sleep is optimal for most human beings. Some can function for less, and some can function with slightly more. And of course, it differs with the age, right? But naturally, as I said, when you sleep early and you let your body wake up, let your body decide how much sleep it needs, right? Subhanallah, the sleep hours, they get taken care of themselves, right? You don't need to worry too much about this. So it's something that you just place in your life, a habit, and you forget about it. So it becomes second nature to you. طيب, inshallah. So that's the first cornerstone, the most important, which is the sleep. Moving on to the diet and exercise. Now, to live a healthy life, even if you did no exercise whatsoever, right? If you just kept your body moving in a natural, so you avoided the sedentary lifestyle of the modern age, right? And you just had, you just incorporated, brief walks and up and down the stairs and just walking and taking regular breaks. The body does take care of itself mostly, right? But diet, right, is more important, right? So diet is where 90% of our focus should be, because this is something, if we can get this right, our body will take care of itself. We will free ourselves from most illnesses, right? We will fix our sleep as a result of our diet as well, okay? Inshallah. And by diet, I mean when to eat and what to eat and what kind of food and where the source of the food, and it includes all of that, inshallah. So the first thing is, diet is 90% priority when it comes to the two cornerstones remaining after sleep, right? So diet is 90% and exercise is 10% in terms of its priority. طيب? So let's talk about diet. Now in Islam, of course, we are told that our food should be halal and it should be tayyib, right? Tayyib means, of course, halal is clear. Anything that is not clearly haram stated in the Quran and Sunnah, or something that is understood from the Sunnah and the ijma' of the Sahaba and the Ummah. Anything that is halal, it's halal, we know it. Tayyib, inshallah. And of course, if you're doubtful about anything, you can always ask the scholars. After you know what something is halal, you also need to know when something is tayyib. Tayyib is something which keeps food in line with its natural order, right? It is not it is not tampered with too much, right? It is close to its natural disposition, right? So organic foods, basically. You need to keep yourself close to eating organic foods. So that's the first thing. As a principle ethic in diet, you should always try and stick to halal and tayyib. Okay? Any processed food, so let's say, okay, let's put it this way. Processed foods are not tayyib. Okay, most of them, of course. Then foods which are not organic, whole foods, right? And of course, that would So process is a big term, right? It includes a lot of things. طيب, so processed foods are something that will not be classified as طيب, mostly speaking. طيب, inshallah. But some processing is natural, like you can buy ground spices, and of course that is not much processing. That's just putting the spices together. You can do that at home and all that. Inshallah. طيب, so halal and طيب. Make sure your food is halal and طيب. So طيب, naturally sourced, organic, kept close to the nature as Allah Azza wa Jalla has produced it. Now, moving on. Before we talk about what kinds of foods to eat and the macros and micros, inshallah, diet is essentially medicine. In the prophetic medicine, the principles and ethics of medicine are that your food is supposed to be your first medicine. So the cure, the food is the cure, and the cure is essentially medicine. The first principle is the first ethic, the Islamic ethic of medicine, is that you protect your bodies with your food and how the patterns of eating, how you eat. Okay, so the principle that you should always keep in mind and take away from this is when you eat. So the pattern of your eating is more important than what you eat. Right? I'll repeat that. When you eat is more important than what you eat. طيب. Now, of course, this goes against some common sense among in the people and the common knowledge. But let me clarify this. Human beings and of course the Sahaba from their lives, we see that they live under different circumstances. Not all foods are available to all people. Some only survive on meat, like the Eskimos. Some only survive on carbs, and basic proteins, right? And some have a more balanced, very, very, beautifully organized, resourced diets like the Italian Mediterranean diet or the Japanese diet, right? But if you look at the life of the Sahaba, there's many, many days they go without food, right? There's many days they just have barley, right? And they just cook barley, which is pure carbs, right? Of course, it has micronutrients, but it's carbs, right? So it's a different form of eating than the Mediterranean, for example, diet, or the Eskimo diet, or the Japanese diet. Okay, then you have instances where they cook meat. So they eat meat, tayyib, inshallah. Not all vegetables are available to them because they live in a desert. Some vegetables are available, right? Zaytun is available, and some other, like, I think some other vegetables are available, yes. Right, so of course we know some of the zucchini so zucchini and pumpkin was one of the favorites of the Prophet, as we learn. So point being that human beings live on different foods, right? So what you eat cannot be the most important thing, right? And what we learn from the Sunnah is when you eat is more important. Okay, now let's quickly talk about the science, so that we can contextualize this. Fasting, which is a state of so we're not talking about the Shariah fast, which is from dawn till dusk, and you don't eat or drink anything in the middle. By fasting, I mean a state in which you don't consume any macros. Okay, no sugars, no carbs, no proteins, and no fats. Okay, so that is essentially the state in which you can drink water. Right, so you're not technically fasting according to the Shariah definition of it. However, you are in a state of food deprivation where you're not consuming any food. You are drinking water perhaps, right? But you're not consuming anything. Now, that state, right, has been tested, thousands of times in thousands of places. It says consensus in the medical community that fasting is the number one thing you can do for your body. And fasting essentially is the 101 of diet, right? Your diet must have fasting patterns, right? So when you eat is more important. Fasting, there's a book called The Fasting Cure, very famous, I think, written in the last century, where the doctor who's written it, he cured people of their cancer, epilepsy, and many other forms of disease in very, very short periods of time, right? What happens when you fast is the fasting allows ketone bodies to be released for your mind, so your mind functions very well, which is why some of the philosophers, they would not permit students to enter their class unless they were in a fasting state. And so fasting, it promotes brain health, by releasing many, many important ketone bodies that are super brain food for your brains. Then what fasting does is, after a period of 12 to 14-ish hours, it starts breaking down the reserve stores of glucose in your body. طيب. So it keeps the insulin levels under control, because your body has enough time to digest everything. So insulin levels don't spike that often. طيب. Then it depletes the glycogen stores. Right. Then when it realizes that it's not getting enough food, what happens is it starts breaking down anything which is unnecessary. So it starts off breaking bad cells, tumors, so cancer, right, in its initial forms, of course. And some people also say that glucose is the primary source for cancers. So if you deprive yourself of glucose, especially carbs, your cancers can be treated in a very healthy manner. And there's many research studies in this. طيب. Then your body starts deleting these bad cells, tumors and everything. It starts to eat the fat, excessive fat. So the body, subhanAllah, our bodies, Allah Azza wa Jal has designed it in such a way that it can take care of itself in many ways. It doesn't rely on many external things. Inshallah, we'll talk about this more in the exercise section later. But as a principle, you should know that our bodies, subhanAllah, the way Allah has designed it, we don't need many things for its survival. Allah has made this body so robust that even if it gets very little to eat, it can survive very, very well, right? You can survive for many, many days on just water and simple basic food, right? Inshallah. And it's documented throughout our history, our seerah, the lives of the Sahaba, the ulama, the tabi'in. It's all over the place. And then, back in the day with the philosophers and everything, people who have actually spent some time in the intellectual realm, who've pushed the limits of our thinking in some shape or form, they testify to the value of this, inshallah. So fasting is number one thing that you need to incorporate. So when you eat is more important what you eat. Okay. Another benefit so we see that our glycogen stores are in control. The insulin levels are in control. The body is getting rid of any bad material and toxins. Any toxins, any tumors, any bad cells. It repairs itself. Subhanallah, right? It repairs itself. It reproduces. White cells, right? So it boosts your immunity. طيب. And more so, subhanallah, it actually it creates neurological patterns, so your neurons get strengthened when you fast, right? And one important thing, very, very beautiful, subhanallah, when you only eat something small, right, a few morsels of food, the body still thinks you're fasting. And this is beautiful because the Prophet he would only have a few morsels of food in the morning, right? The suhoor is only something small that you eat, right? It's not something that's too filling, right? And then the main meal is served towards the evening, right? So the body, when you eat only a few dates and some milk, right, the body still thinks you're fasting, right? Because it depletes that very quickly and it enters back into that stage. So eating only to keep your back straight. That is a beautiful principle that is taught to us by the Sunnah, right? So when you eat is important. طيب. We can go on. Inshallah, we'll discuss the science of fasting in more detail when we study its specific literature in our Tajdeed Club series, bidnillah. But you get the point. How fasting is important. Now, there's fasting routines are many. The one I recommend is that at least fast for 20 hours. Right? Don't eat for 20 hours straight. Right? And of course, that is not the Shariah fast. That I'm talking about your general eating habits. Right? When you're fasting, have your suhoor, have your the Mondays and Thursdays, have your suhoor, have your iftar. Inshallah, suhoor should be light and iftar should be mild. Inshallah, but generally speaking, 20 hours of not eating, right? And then have a 4-hour window in which you are going to eat a couple meals. What is even better is just give yourself 2 hours to consume anything that you want to consume, right? Inshallah. And the rest of the day, just have your water, inshallah, and in that water you can use natural water that is used at the time of the Prophet, the water from the wells. It has salts in it, right? So it functions as a natural electrolyte. So doctors recommend that your water. So electrolytes are important for the body, for the functions, for the muscles, and everything. So drinking natural water, naturally sourced water, has electrolytes in it, right? Well water, the fountain water, the spring water, these have natural salts in it. So salts, they allow your muscles to function properly and everything. So electrolytes are important. So your water should be the number one thing. And if your water doesn't have enough salts, just put a pinch of salt in it in the morning, right? And then drink your water normally in the day, but then have, sections where you just, sort of electrolyte your water, essentially. Other than that, your meals should be reserved for only 2 to 4 hours in the day. So you have, for example, have your first meal at 11 o'clock, and then have your main meal at 3 o'clock, and that's it. That's all your food for the day. There's no snacking, there's nothing else. And subhanAllah, the beauty of fasting is that you don't even have to stick to that 2-hour window or 4-hour window. What you need to do is, say a family dinner is coming up, and it's not the time that you eat normally. You can either protest, right, and not eat anything at that family dinner, and of course be deprived of any good food. Or what you can do is just delay eating that day until that meal, and eat your, inshallah, to your best. And as I said, it's not, what you eat is less important. So you can eat your, delicious, donuts and cookies and everything. You can enjoy the food that Allah created for you, of course. But when you enjoy that meal, inshallah, then you give yourself again the next 20 hours, right? That's the important rule, inshallah. Let your body, repair itself, heal itself. So fasting is the healing. Fasting is the cure for the body, right? It is the number one thing you can do for your diet. So when you eat is more important. Always have this, and of course the doctors, they recommend that even 18 hours is a good amount of fasting time. So you can have 6 hours of eating time and then 18 hours of fasting. Start with something, right? And of course, as I said, one thing at a time, baby steps, and then gradually, master one milestone and then move to the next, right? So the way to incorporate this in your life would be to, if you're used to eating a lot, at least 3 meals a day, then start by skipping one of the meals, or at least delay it by half an hour or an hour, and then start squeezing the meals together, right? Inshallah. So every week, just move half an hour ahead, inshallah. Over time, you will realize that you have effectively squeezed all your eating time in the 4-hour window. And then, inshallah, more so in just a 2-hour window. SubhanAllah, just fasting and sleeping properly, right? And basic mobility like walking. This is 95% of your health. If there's anything that you're going to take from this video right now, just these 3. Sleeping properly according to the sunnah, diet as I've described, fasting, and even if you of course, sort of diet, fasting and eating organic foods as much as possible, and then walking. 3 things. This is the ultimate simple, or the most simplified way of optimal body routine, inshallah. طيب. So now, of course, when you eat is discussed. Let's talk about what you eat. Now, when you eat, what you eat has 2 components: macros and micros. Macros are essentially the food that you see the big chunk of it, right? It's either protein, meat, or carbs, so grains and stuff, sugars, or fats, butter, cheese, or fat or lard, whatever the case may be, inshallah, or full fat milk and everything. So that's your macros, right? And then the micros. Micros are your vitamins, minerals, electrolytes, right? Nutrients. These are your micros, right? Now, again, micros are more important than the macros. Of course, micros are hidden inside macros, yes. However, micros can be extracted from simple foods, right? And we don't need to worry too much about the macros at that level. Or you can just simply fix your macros and then not worry about micros, because micros will be hidden inside it. I'll give you an example. There was a man, a Scottish man in the last century. He was over 300 kg, so he was very, very obese. What he did was, he went for a 385-day fast, right? And all he did was drink water with electrolytes in, of course, and had his multivitamins, right? And that's all he had for more than a year, right? He lost majority of that weight. He became very, very slim and healthy, and he remained healthy throughout that period. There was no detriment to his health, which shows us that your fasting time, and your micronutrients, including electrolytes and the water and everything, they're more important than the macros. Of course, as a general principle. Now, of course, macros are important for people who are, in an average weight class. So now let's talk about the macros. Macros, you should prefer organic, natural foods for your macros. Proteins are more important than carbs and fat. Okay. After proteins are your fats and then your carbs, right? This is the hierarchy. Carbs are not more important. Of course, as this is the ideal diet, okay? The ideal as the science recommends it. So always keep in mind that, when you eat is important, what you eat is less important, and you're not going to have the same this ideal distinction that protein more important than fat, and then and you may not have the luxury of choosing this, right? In Mauritania, they just eat what they have. If they have a goat, they just sacrifice it. They slaughter it and they eat it. If they don't have any of that, they just eat rice. They just boil some rice or some bread, mix some bread, and that's it, and some tea, and that's how they've been surviving for centuries, right? They've been surviving for centuries. So let's not worry too much about macros, but if you want to understand the ideal picture of your plate, then it should have the best picture I can give you as a most actionable takeaway from this, half your plate should be vegetables, okay, natural. So, and that can include sweet potato, although that's a carb, but it is, it is very close to a vegetable because of its nutrient-rich constitution compared to a simple potato. Although potatoes also have many important nutrients like potassium. Right. So the 5 a day principle is good to follow. Right. So your plate. Let's just imagine your plate in front of you now. Okay. Let's just talk about that. This is going to be the last thing we talk about in diet. Your plate looks like so. You have half the plate which has vegetables, and ideally we're talking about 3 vegetables at least. Right. And this can be repeated. It doesn't have to be different vegetables every single day, but of course you should vary. You should experiment with different things, and the more you have, the better. So half the plate is vegetables. Okay. Now those vegetables, and so okay, let's say macros. So half of your plate should focus on your macros, and that is best taken from either meat, which is the second thing we'll talk about that in a second, but vegetables and seeds. So make a salad with sautéed vegetables. Right, just 3 vegetables at least, and some seeds. So pine seeds, chia seeds, whatever the case may be. Right, nuts essentially. Combine that into a sautéed salad with some healthy olive oil and some vinegar. Vinegar is good for your mind, inshallah, and for your gut. Right, or you can make some salad in yogurt. Right, yogurt, inshallah. That is also very, very healthy for your gut. That's half your plate. That will sort out, 3 vegetables with some seeds and some yogurt or some olive oil and some vinegar, inshallah, and some salt, of course, for the electrolytes. That will get you, enough of your macros, inshallah. That's 3 of your 5 a day. Right. The other half of your plate should be either all meat, right? Or half meat, so quarter meat and then quarter some form of healthy fat and protein mix. So eggs, for example, right? Eggs have a very healthy composition of protein and fat, healthy cholesterol and fat, right? Or you can have some cheese with it, right? So meat and cheese, meat and eggs. طيب. This is one of the ideal situations. طيب. Now, as the subcontinent diet, right? It varies from that slightly. And if you're sticking to your fasting routine and you're focusing on your macros, inshallah, this should fix itself. You have a chapati, just 1 chapati, right? 1 roti. Avoid naans, processed, wheat and stuff. So don't, consume naans and white flour products. Stick to whole grain, atta, wheat, roti or chapati, or bread if you're, doing that, or if you're making dumplings, make them out of, whole grain flour, inshallah. And then have enough of your macros, like I said, enough vegetables and seeds in it, beans and stuff. So beans and vegetables and seeds in that meal. So that's going to be half of it, and then some portion of some protein and fat, right? Inshallah. If you can manage that, a good plate, which doesn't fill you up too much, but it doesn't leave you too hungry either. It is enough, just enough, that fills you up and keeps your back straight, but it doesn't fill you up too much to the full, right? Inshallah. So a third portion for the food, and a third of your belly should be for water, and the rest of it should be empty, right? That's the ideal form of eating, inshallah. Some days you are going to overeat because you don't have different circumstances. It's not haram to overeat sometimes. It's makruh. However, we're talking about a general healthy routine for yourselves. Tayyib, inshallah. So don't worry too much about your Pakistani diet. Just have enough eggs and meat in it, a few times a week, 3 times a week, if you can afford it. If not, just stick to your diet, man. Just stick to your diet, eat some more eggs, and 3 to 4 eggs a day, and that is that's a very, very good diet, because we tend to not prioritize protein in our lives. And protein is very good for your muscle synthesis and neuron strengthening. So this is why I'm trying to emphasize on the protein intake. But vegetables, whole foods like that, like nuts and stuff, that is very, very important, and eggs are important. Okay, and then if you can afford meat 3 or 4 times a week, inshallah, then do that, right? And make it enough that the portion fills you up for the next, inshallah, for the next 7 to 8 hours, and then you just get used to the fasting routine, and then you just eat it the next day, right? So that's your main meal. And then, of course, you need to, incorporate some type of fruits in it. So ideally 2 to 3 fruits a day, right? That's a good thing. If you can't afford it, then of course it's not important. Allah will allow you to live for many, many years, even if you don't have any of those resources. I mean, Mujahideen, what do they have, subhanAllah? They have nothing to eat, right? They half a day in the morning, half a day in the evening. Not even clean water. So you're going to survive, inshallah. It's more important when you eat than what you eat as a principle. And the body takes care of itself more often than not. And Allah Azza wa Jal has placed mechanisms in our body to protect itself. Subhanallah. Right? So just as a key principle, just focus on your fasting routine, focus on your macros and your proteins, and when you eat your proteins and your fats, focus on your natural organic foods over manufactured processed foods. Right? So you've now captured the essence of a healthy body in terms of it's just mastering the sleep, the diet, and a simple exercise like walking. Now, but if you want to, inshallah, take it to the next level and understand exercise of your body, then let's talk about it. Exercise, which is the term we give to the physical strength of our body normally, it is quite caricatured in the mainstream media and YouTube culture. Mostly people, glorify the gym culture. They glorify, calisthenics, for example, and think, just that. And just after doing a lot of research, I've come to this conclusion that the best exercise is that allows you to retain your natural strength, natural mobility, and natural movement. These 3 things are the pillars of a good, strong, healthy, mobile, flexible body. If your body lacks any of these 3 things, these 3 pillars, your body is not functioning at an optimal level. This is why people who are puffed, they go to gym, many, many hours a day, they end up with stiff shoulders, stiff knees, right? And they can't squat properly. They don't have the full mobility. They don't have the full range of motion in their bodies, right? And when it comes to strength, they can't. The way the body strengthens every single bone, every single ligament, every single muscle, right? Through the way it does that through natural movements, it can never do in a gym. You can isolate muscles, yes, but that is not a good, medical advice for anyone who wants to live a strong, healthy life, even until their old age, right? So strength, mobility, and movement. Strength is essentially your ability to coordinate your body weight. And of course, you can incorporate some extra added weights into the body movements. But this is, strength focuses on retaining muscle and keeping your muscles strong, right? And keeping it functional throughout your years. And of course, when you grow, when you age, you go through muscle atrophy, which basically means that muscles break down, and your muscles, you can see how old people, their muscles start to dangle, right? They start hanging, basically. They're not very stiff. It's because their muscles are degenerating. They're getting weak. So strength is important to retain muscle. It's important for your bone density, and it's important for your brain function as well, right? So strength. Now, strength essentially focuses on the compound body movements which we are born with naturally, and I'll speak about that in the TJCR framework inshallah in a second. Mobility is essentially the term we give to flexibility, how flexible you are in your range of motions, right? So this area targets anything that is ranging from stiffness to sore muscles, anything that prevents you from being completely flexible with your body, right? And be able to get into any natural position easily, get up from natural positions from the floor, everything. And then your movement essentially is the pillar which focuses on your natural movements, squatting, climbing, jumping, all of that, right? Which is different from strength and mobility. Mobility is all about flexibility and experiencing a full range of motion in all of your body parts. Strength is all about, using weight, body weight, ideally, and something extra, but using natural body movements to strengthen your body. And then movement is all about, reliving, your natural body movements, like squatting, like jumping and sprinting. So retaining all of the natural body movements that a baby is born with that we tend to lose over time. This is a holistic framework for the physical strength and mobility of your body. Strength, flexibility, and movement. Okay. Now, in a simplistic framework, if you had no time to do any of this, simply walking will be more than enough for you. Our students, we read together the letter by Thomas Anderson to one of his nephews, and he said in it, and this is scientifically true. For example, simply walking after a meal, right, it reduces the insulin activity by 30 to 40%. This is huge. Which means that if you just walked after eating, and this is something that the Tajdeed Nabawi, the prophetic medicine, talked about from centuries, subhanAllah. And people have known it, like even before that, the Greeks knew it, and others, Indians knew it. It's something so natural. So he says, I've not seen anyone who walks every day that gets sick in the old age, essentially. I'm paraphrasing his words. Right? He does not know. He says, I do not know of a single man who walks and he gets sick. And he's weak and he's frail, subhanAllah, right? He's not, and he's not healthy. Walking is the most important thing that you can do for your body every single day, and walking regularly, right? Ideally, anything more than 8,000 steps, which is roughly hour and a half, to 10,000 steps, which is 10,000 to 12,000 steps, which takes you about a quarter to 2 or 2 hours roughly. However, let's just stick to 1 hour of dedicated walking, and this can be split in the day. It can be half an hour in the morning, half an hour in the evening, right? Or 1 hour straight, inshallah, whatever, however you want to schedule yourself. And then during the day, right, we incorporate walking and moving about as a natural, an autopilot kind of activity that we just, every few minutes we just get up and walk to get water, sit on the floor, get up and then walk, around the block. Just, taking a break every 90 minutes, for example. So, our brains can't function for more than 90 minutes. They can't focus very deeply for more than 90 minutes as a cycle, right? After 90 minutes, you seem to, most people can't be in focus for more than a few minutes now, but people who optimize their focus, they can't focus, an optimal mind can't focus for more than 90 minutes, roughly speaking. And then you need to take a rest. So just go for a walk, inshallah, every half an hour and a half, just go for a walk, 5 minute, 10 minute walk around the block, and then come back and start this is way more beneficial for your mind and, for your focus, for your alertness, for your memory than anything else. Exercise increases your brain function. It makes memorizing easier, learning easier. It consolidates your memory, forming memory is a lot easier. And it's so much, subhanAllah, important for your, overall brain activity, subhanAllah. Right, just one last thing about walking. And that is that, so when you walk, you become creative. So most of the legendary authors and even the modern day authors, the common routine they have three traits in common. Majority of the creatives and the authors, right? They have three things in common. One of that is walking, taking long walks every single day, right? Every single day. Then the second thing is, of course, to ritualize everything, their writing routine. And then the third thing is to capture ideas. Wherever they're going, they have a small notepad with them, or if they carry only note-taking phone or device with them, they just type in the notes. SubhanAllah, these three things, so it's super charging for your creativity and thinking power, and SubhanAllah, consolidating your thoughts and thinking clearly, SubhanAllah, and recharging yourself for the next day for deep work. طيب, let's lastly just quickly talk about the CJCL framework. Lifting, dumbbells and barbells and machine exercises. This is all a hoax. It is a complete waste of time. It has some benefit, right? But it is going to mess your body up in the long run, right? You need to come back. We need to revert to the our primary natural movements for our health and exercise. If we could focus, if we just walked and wanted to focus on our exercise and strength, essentially, so walking would take care of most of our mobility and movement, inshallah ta'ala. However, if you want to focus on a strength as well, just 3 exercises. So push, pull, and squat. These 3 exercises are essentially the framework, the foundational framework of strength, right? You don't need to go beyond this. All of gym and bulking up and getting, proper big and muscular, all of that is nonsense. All of that is a waste of time. All of that is done in an emulation of the Western model. This is not done on the emulation or the imitation of the Muslim Islamic model of how the Sahaba were. The Sahaba were, slim people. They were, they were not as hunked up, and they didn't have big frames. We have many ahadith and riwayat and athar where the ulama, the Sahaba, they were described as thin people, as in slim, not bulky, not fat. SubhanAllah, right? So we have to get rid of this. We have to aim for exercise with the intention of strengthening our bodies and having enough flexibility and optimal movement, so that we may use our bodies for the utmost service of Allah Azza wa Jal and His Deen. طيب? Alright. So we've been tackling, the 80-20 thing. We've been saying, okay, what is the most important thing? And if you could leave the rest and just do one thing, what is that? We've said sleep, and with diet, eating whole foods and fasting for most of the time, right? And with exercise, we said walking is enough, but walking will take care of the mobility and movement. But if you want to focus on strength as well, then just push, pull, and squat. So push-ups, pull-ups, and squatting. But if you want a more holistic framework for exercise, then we have to look at the CJCL framework. The CJCL framework is just like the 7-8-3-3-2-1 model, is my own formulation. But essentially, the C stands for crawl, J stands for jump, C stands for climb, and L stands for lift. These 4 are the primary movements that every human being does. And if you could do them well, and then you could do them in different variations, your entire body will be strong, it will be flexible, and it will be completely optimized for movement, right? So when we say crawling is any exercise that involves the hands touching the ground and then you're moving with it. Okay? Now that could bring into mind the standard crawling, how a baby crawls, for example. That is also fine. There could be a cat crawl, right? Where you lift up your knees and then you walk on your hands, essentially, right? It could be like how a monkey jumps, right? That's also crawling. Now, on a basic level, a basic push-up could be considered a crawl, because you're pushing, your hands and feet are touching the ground at the same time, right? So push-ups are essentially incorporated within a crawl. So you can be creative with this. And of course, inshallah, we'll talk about these specific exercises when we talk about the exercises, inshallah, in the Tajdeed Club series. But crawling, any exercise that deals with, the hands touching the ground and you moving with it. This is super important because, subhanAllah, it aligns your spine and the shoulder movement with your lower back and your lower legs, and subhanAllah, this exercise, all of these exercises will bring everything together. So strength, mobility, and movement. You don't have to think about these things separately. Now, sisters, for example, back in the day, they used to mop their floors with their hand. They didn't have I'm speaking from my context into the subcontinent. I've seen our elders, the mothers and our grandmothers, they used to mop the floor with their hands. So they would squat down on the floor and have the cloth in their hands, and they would mop the whole thing with their hands, and they would be moving with their feet, slowly, all around the room, basically, right? So that is that is one of the ideal forms of crawling, right? SubhanAllah. It fires up all of the important muscle groups and ligaments and joints that you need for a healthy, strong and flexible and mobile body, subhanAllah, right? So push-ups is one of the forms of it. You can also think of dips, for example, if someone does that. But anything where essentially the hands and the shoulders are being used for moving most of your body weight, right? So you can start off by push-ups, and if the entire push-up, the full push-up is hard for you, start with the knee push-up or with elevated push-up, with your hands are on top of an elevated object and your feet on the ground. So it's takes off a bit, a bit of the weight off your shoulders. You can think of the variations, inshallah, and we can discuss this separately we are going to study this. But the key takeaway is start touching your hands to the ground. Doing burpees is another example of doing the crawl thing. طيب. The next thing is jumping. Now, jumping is any exercise that involves the let's say the usage of the muscles of the feet and the legs to leave the ground, right? On a basic level, a simple walk is part of that movement, a jumping movement, but you don't leave the ground. Essentially, you walk, you move forward, right? So your feet are responsible for, and your hips and the quads and the hamstrings, all of those muscle groups are responsible, and the lower back and the core, it's responsible for thrusting you forward. Then you can think of running, jogging, right? And you can think of sprinting in that manner, right? And then you can think of properly jumping, right? So jumping on an object to take the impact of landing, or you can just jump high and just land back. Jump high and land back. Of course, you have to take care of the ground, make sure that it's not too stiff so that it doesn't hurt your knees. But jumping essentially is that movement. So crawling and jumping. Climbing is essentially when you just use your hands to engage your shoulders to hang. When you hang, simply hanging, right? You can start off with simply hanging. That's the first thing. That's the most basic form of climb. You're using the most fundamental muscles in your grip, your hands, and your forearms and everything, and your shoulders, of course. People who hang, right? So there was a study done which studied people who came into the surgery with shoulder injuries and stiffnesses, right? They had to get surgeries done to get their mobility back. But with just the healing method, 90% or so of the patients, they were cured. They did not require surgery after they regularly hung from bars and stuff, right? So hanging is a form of healing, subhanallah. Just like crawling involves squatting, and squatting is another form of healing your body. Your body heals when it squats, right? Subhanallah. So, and then jumping, of course, walking and running is another form of healing. The body heals when you do these. So body heals and it becomes strong and mobile and flexible, subhanallah. So climbing. Then you can go a step further by hanging with one hand. So shifting hands when you hang, right? And then you can sort of jump and try and get to the top of the bar with the chin without pulling yourself up, and then slowly lower yourself down. And then slowly you can work up your way to doing a full pull up, and then you can inshallah do this into a monkey climb, where you can hang on to different objects. You know how the kids do in the park, right? So hanging, and moving on a trail, hanging trail, subhanallah, right? And then another variation, a very advanced variation of it, would be mountain climbing. right? When you go bouldering, subhanAllah. That is another thing. Now, these three would be, we could stop there, but human beings, normal human beings also perform another function in their lives, which is lifting. You are required to lift objects from the ground, and so most of our bodies are not primed for that. We don't train our postures for that, and for that reason, many people, they injure their backs for good when they lift heavy objects without knowing the proper form and without lifting, because they haven't trained that muscle group, they haven't trained that movement, right? They don't have the mobility and the flexibility for lifting things properly. So lifting would just be, and then again, squatting could be another example of lifting, where you just lift your body up, thrusting you with the support of your feet, thrusting yourself up. Then you can think of, picking a little box from the floor, a small, kg, 2 kg of something from the floor, a bag of books, right, or a pile of books from the floor, and putting it on the table. Small movements like that, right? Just and you can incorporate this in a form of an exercise. Put the a bag of books on the table, put it back, and put it pick it up and put it back on the floor, and do it a few times, right? You can build a complete exercise routine around that. Now, the exact exercise routine of this, of course, we'll have to look at different circumstances for people, and of course, it's going to be different for sisters. But one of the best ways of incorporating this is if you only have one single room and you don't have a lot of, of course, everyone can walk. So leaving walking out of the question. If you only had one place, a single room to exercise, and you don't have anything else, I recommend a single workout that incorporates all of these things. And that is a good, slow, controlled burpee, right? But it's different, where what you do is, and you can look up how a burpee is done, inshallah. But a burpee basically is where you lower you lower your body into a squat, then you push your legs back, and you go into a plank position, and then you slowly go into a push-up, and you come back, you force your legs forward, and then you go into a squat again, and then you get up, and that's a burpee. Now, you can make it explosive. How you can do that is, when you get up, you jump. As opposed to just slowly getting up, you jump, right? And then you land, and then you go back into a burpee. So this incorporates a form of crawling, getting down, squatting, the core is engaged, then you do a push-up, and then when you get up, you thrust and you jump, right? So this will take care of most of your muscles, inshallah. And then, of course, it doesn't include the climbing part. So what you can do is, in front of you, you can hang a pull-up bar in front of you, and as you do your burpee and you jump, right? On the second, you can do 2 jumps, right? So you can say you get up from the burpee, you jump, land, and then jump again to hang on the bar, and hang for a few seconds. And you can, as you progress, you can do a full pull-up and then jump down and then get into a burpee again. If you just do 5 to 10, burpees like that, you will be knackered. You'll be finished by the end of it. So it really is one of the easiest ways that you can incorporate this kind of framework. If it is difficult for you, you can think of all of these exercises separately. So you can do 5 squats, 5 push-ups, 5 jumps, 5 pull-ups, and then go for just repeat this to have that squatting, pushing, push-ups, pull-ups, and jumping in that one exercise routine, one sort of set. And you can just add exercises to it, like sprinting in your place, perhaps, right? Or what you can do is you can go to a park and you can create a circuit for yourself, like we do in football training, where you could just make different spots. So you could make a square in a small space in a little park or a green area. You do some squats and some push-ups, and you sprint to the next point, and do some jumping, and then you sprint again to the next point, and then you incorporate some form of pull-ups in that corner, and then you jump as you run back, and you do some form of lifting, for example, and you lift that heavy weight. So like a farmer's walk. Look this exercise up. Farmer's walk, right? It's essentially, it imitates how the farmers carry heavy weights, and they move objects from one place to another in their normal farm routine, right? Lift. So you can do this in a circuit format, inshallah. But the simplest thing I can recommend is start with walking, one thing at a time. Perfect your walk. 1 hour a day of walking, and then on some days you can alternate walking with this high intensity workout, where you just repeat a set of push-ups, squatting, pull-ups, and jumping and sprinting. right? Just high intensity workout, the HIIT workout, as they call it. And this is the simplest I can take you. Of course, inshallah, the more advanced you become in your fitness, the more advanced forms of crawling and jumping and climbing and lifting you can incorporate. The best form of workout are essentially the circuit workouts, as I've described. But it's not going to be possible for everyone. So what is practical for most people is simply to walk. And when you're indoors, as a form of break from your regular work, just do some push-ups, squats, and some pull-ups and jumping. Simple 4 things, inshallah. This will keep your body mobile. This is the key takeaway for your exercise. And the last thing is essentially to design your home in a way that favors body's natural movements. Design your home layout, the interiors of your house, in a way which is not too reliant on chairs and beds and sofas and all. Just try and incorporate as much floor work in your house. So remove all your furniture, remove beds and whatnot. Just have a floor sitting, a floor mattress, a floor bed, right? And try to not bring in shoes so you can, sit on the floor, eat on the floor. Don't have, dining tables in the house. Design your house in a way, wherever you have the option to. Not everyone is going to have that option, but you can slowly, inshallah, take your your home in that direction. Of course, most people, when they're not married, they live with their parents, so they don't have much say in that. But in their room, they can do things. But once you get married and you're in charge of a house, do that. Design your home in a way that favors your body's natural movements. So you're already naturally you're squatting to get down to study, to eat, to sleep, and then you get up. So squatting is a part. And then for example, your bathroom has a squatting seat. It doesn't have the seat toilet, right? It has a WC, the squatting toilet, which is where you sit down basically, right? So your bathroom has that, it favors that kind of movement. Your house, your normal furniture, there's no furniture, so your normal sitting is essentially going to favor you going down back to the floor again and again and getting up and again and getting down and getting up again. Then if you're working, instead of getting a chair and a table, right, focus on getting a standing desk, right? So your body is not forced to sit down. Inshallah, when you're working, you're standing up, your back is straight, you're engaged in a movement. Inshallah, when you sit down in a squat. And subhanAllah, naturally, when you sit down on the floor, you can't stay still in that position for a very long time. Unlike a chair, which is it's often is very comfortable, and you can tend to sit for very, very long hours without even realizing that you've been sitting. It's super comfortable. And what it does is it makes your many of the important muscle connections, muscle groups weak, right? They go out of place. So if you experience lower back pain, or you were trying to walk or run, and then all of a sudden you have a cramp, and it is because your muscles have become, they've degenerated a bit. They've become loose. They've not been looked after well. Okay? So your body essentially will thank you, and it will fulfill its right, or you will fulfill your rights towards your body, and your body will fulfill its rights towards Allah Azza wa Jalla and His Deen. If you keep in mind your house design, right? You engineer your sleep in the prophetic way. You have this important mentality of when you eat is more important than what you eat, and then of course incorporating a healthy diet and a healthy movement framework, which focuses on strength, mobility, and movement via the CSCL framework, right? And at least what you can do is just walk, right? If you can design your life in this way, right, inshallah, this will tick off the body requirement that defines you as a person, inshallah. So after you've taken control of your mind and soul, and you've taken control of your time, you can incorporate all of these things into your routine, in your timetable, and time block all of these things in your timetable, in daily routine, that you don't have to think about it. It becomes second nature to you. So all of these things, think about this. If you're living a lifestyle where the norm is that you fast, and when you eat, you only eat natural organic foods, right, where protein and healthy vegetables and nuts, and these are the priority, for example, right, naturally you're going to stay healthy, inshallah. And if you sleep well, your memory, your mood, your hormones, everything's going to stay balanced, and you're going to recover well, you're going to memorize well, everything is going to be top notch for you in you. And then when you have this exercise built in, like where you at least have 1 hour of dedicated walking or exercising, and then on top of that, your entire day has these mobility, strength, and movement routines built in. crawling, jumping, climbing and lifting kind of movements built in, subhanAllah, you're going to remain very, very healthy and fit, inshallah, in very, very, for a very long time, well into your old age, inshallah. So that is the summary of how to master your body after you've already mastered your time and your mind and your soul, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. The fourth thing that defines who we are our families, which families we belong to, and how we've been brought up, and what kinds of children we are bringing up ourselves. The strength that you have with your family, so the strength of your family, it directly translates to your own strength. The stronger your family, the stronger you will be. What I mean by that is that if the family is peaceful, there is no infighting, there is no backbiting, there is no, ill thoughts about each other, there's no, black magic involved against each other, when the family is free of that, and the family, is built on the Deen of Allah Azza wa Jal, and the person who is a student of knowledge, he can study with a peaceful mind. He can study, with a completely undistracted manner. Right? He can study with a mind that will allow him to focus fully because he has the support of his family. Right? The famous adage, behind every successful man, there is a successful woman. It is not completely out of place. In fact, it is quite accurate in the sense that the woman that we, believe are successful, or they are the reason why men become successful in the world, are the mothers and supportive wives and then loving daughters, right? And likewise, of course, we, as a general grouping of it, the entire family, the children, the brothers, the father, the uncles, the stronger the family, the stronger you will be. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the only reason he survived for 13 years in Mecca, after the permission of Allah Azza wa Jal, and after the tawfiq of Allah Azza wa Jal and the aid that he gave him, the nusrah, was his family, the ties of Bani Hashim, right? And how his uncle protected him, right? Even in da'wah, and when you want to, for example, stand in the path of Allah Azza wa Jal, even in the battlefield, in our history, nations have been resurrected. Nations have been built up from scratch on the foundation of a strong family, a strong tribal relation between the tribes. Okay, Arabs were famous for these bonds, strong bond between their tribes and their families, right? So much so that, for example, marriage, right? Marriage is not just for expressing love and having children, and although that those are the primary reasons, right? One of the ways marriage was used back in the day was to form ties of kinship, right? And the stronger that ties of those ties of kinship were, the stronger the polity of the political body of the Muslims would become, right? So the strength of your family, your kinship, directly translates to your own strength in terms of your studies, in terms of your peace of mind, in terms of your rizq, in terms of your barakah in your life, and of course in terms of your da'wah. And inshallah, in the future, Allah Azza wa Jal gives you enough success when you have a community, when you want to stand up and make inshallah yourselves into a state of your own, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, just like the Al Saud, the kingdom of Saud did it, the Banu Abbas did it in their times, and so on and so forth, right? It's the history is rampant of these examples, right? It's filled with examples of this nature. A stronger family will translate into into strength in every single area of your life, right? So you strengthen your ties of kinship, right? A hadith in Bukhari, it mentions that the Prophet said that if you want to increase your rizq and you want to increase your lifespan and you want to have barakah in your life, then strengthen the ties of kinship, right? So if you want to have perpetual barakah in your life, a barakah that never ends and is ever growing, and you feel its effects on you, then you have to strengthen your ties of kinship. So this is very, very important because things fall out of place if the family falls out of place. The family has to bond well, Now, the actionable takeaway from this and on this topic is that the only way to achieve this is to raise a family upon Tawheed and the Deen of Allah Azza wa Jal, in obedience of the Shariah. The family, the only way that they can bond together is upon the principles of Islam. What you do is, in your household, you regularly teach your children, your wives, your father, your family, Aqeedah. Your family is centered around Aqeedah, and then you encourage each other by example first, and then by sermon, your family to observe obedience to the salawat, to adhkar, and so on and so forth. Right? This kind of environment, once it's built inside a family, it bulletproofs the whole family from the attacks of shayateen, from the attacks of the Dajjal, the Dajjals, of the society of men and jinn, and it makes sure that inshaAllah you will have a family, a progeny of children who will be sadaqah jariyah for you once you depart from this world. Okay, so this is as much importance as you've placed on your personal development and regaining your time and building up strong, healthy, wholesome bodies. If all of that does not translate to healthy, strong, robust family structure and strong communities, all of that is going to be put to waste, right? So all of that has to formulate itself and translate directly into a strong community, starting off with the nuclear family, then the extended family, the near family, then the extended family, and then the neighborhood, and so on and so forth. This is exactly how the Prophet ﷺ approached this. His da'wah started with his next of kin, his family, his wife, his children, then his cousins, and so on and so forth. And it spread to Mecca, his city, and then it spread to others outside Mecca, and so on and so forth, until it reached the ends of the world. So this is how you build strong families, and this is the area that you need to focus on very, very keenly and very, very earnestly on, if you really want to build a wholesome life and you want to be effective in this life to attain the highest rank in Jannah, inshaAllah. And the last aspect of your life that has a huge weightage on how you are defined as a person, once you've, of course, tried to master the rest of the domains of your life, and how people see you really, because you can have someone who is poor, and then people see him for his ilm and dhaka and so on and so forth, so his wealth doesn't tarnish his image. And then there's someone who has a lot of wealth, but then he is miserly with it, and so on and so forth. So the wealth of a person and how he uses that wealth in the service of Allah Azza wa Jalla and His Deen and his life to service others, help others, is directly reflective of his character, right? And because all of this exercise, this lifestyle design is to build your character, to define who you are, we have to talk about this important pillar. Now, a few mind shifts, just a few principles to always keep in mind when it comes to wealth and earning money and working and business and so on and so forth. Of course, inshallah, we'll study books on entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship, business and finance and all that in our Tajdeed Club series. But as actionable takeaways, you must always keep a few things in mind, and then I'll give you some actionable steps, inshallah. The Sahaba were students of knowledge. All of them were ulama in different capacities, and they were traders, craftsmen, shop owners, X, Y, and Z. They had work. They worked. The ulama, they had trades. They were traders, they had work, they had crafts that they earned a living with, and then they were ulama. This is how Islam began, before the entire khilafah and supporting of the ulama. And even within that kingdom, you had ulama who were very, very selfless, and they were very they were full of dignity, self-dignity, and they wouldn't allow anyone to help them with any money. So they went to extreme lengths to protect their financial interests. They wouldn't take any help from anyone. They wouldn't bow to anyone. They wouldn't spread their hands in front of anyone. That is the class of ulama, that existed. That is how the Sahaba were. They serviced the Deen of Allah Azza wa Jal with their own wealth, right? The Prophet ﷺ couldn't, he didn't establish a welfare state in the beginning. They didn't have funds. Even when in Medina, most of the time they spent, subhanAllah, it was spent in poverty. It was spent in a lot of hardships. On one of the Shariah, when the Sahaba were sent out to fight by the Prophet ﷺ, all he could give them was a small a sack of dates, and that's it for the entire army, right? A few 100 men, subhanAllah. So it's reflective of how the individual men, they serviced the Deen of Allah Azza wa Jal. The community, it supports its ulama, yes, and it supports its religious activity, right? But back in the day, the ulama were contributing to this. So, there always has been a class which sacrifices everything for the sake of faith, for the sake of knowledge. They accept poverty, they accept extreme poverty and hunger for the sake of knowledge, like the Ashab al-Suffah, Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, and others, right? But most of the Sahaba who are ulama and qudat, they service the Deen of Allah Azza wa Jal with their wealth. They were the pillars, the financial pillars of the society. When Tabuk came, when other battles came, they financed the war, the jihad for the Muslims. Okay, so this is the first mindset we need to bring back. We must not shy away from working. We must not rely on donations from people to support us. We must work to earn a living and support our families, because that is where dignity is. A talib al-ilm, a student of knowledge, should not spread his hands in front of people. He should always have the higher hand. You should always keep the giving hand. That's the first thing to keep in mind. The second principle you need to keep in mind in terms of your wealth, and this first principle, inshallah, in effect, will give you the dignity that Allah Azza wa Jal gives to His ulama in the eyes of people, right? إِزْهَدْ فِي مَا عِنْدَ النَّاسِ يُحِبَّكَ النَّاسِ. Right? When you have zuhud, when you adopt a mind of asceticism, a zuhud, a detachment from the wealth of the people, Allah Azza wa Jal places a love, your love, a love for you in the hearts of people. They love you, they adore you, they admire you, they look up to you because you're selfless, right? You have dignity, self-dignity, self-worth as a human being. And you always have the giving hand, you always give, you never ask for things, right? لا يسألون الناس إلحافا, right? They don't ask people, subhanAllah. They are the hidden gems of the society. They're selfless people. They have dignity. They don't beg people. Inshallah. So Allah will place respect and love of you in the hearts of people. So this will earn you the respect that you need as a da'i to then work on them, inshallah, with their Islam and their religion, aqidah, and so on and so forth. The second principle to keep in mind with regards to your wealth, and I speak about this a lot. I've spoken about this, a lot in the past with my students in my personal classes. But your wealth, the reason why you earn money, is to serve the Deen of Allah Azza wa Jal. يَبْتَغُونَ فَضْلًا مِنْ رَبِّهِمْ وَرِضْوَانًا. Right? Allah Azza wa Jal used the word يَبْتَغُونَ فَضْلًا. They seek the virtue of Allah Azza wa Jal. Right? And by this He's describing earning money and trade and work. Right? Allah Azza wa Jal has always ascribed earning money, He has described earning money as seeking His virtue, seeking His favor. And so, if the reason you're earning money, even if it's halal, if the reason why you earn money and you have $1 billion empire, right, and you drive supercars, for example, right, or you are, you travel the world and you have, many real estates, or you're living a life of luxury and you wear, designer clothes and brands and this and that. If your income is halal and you are, all you do with that wealth is for that sake, and it's not that you seek Allah's favor with that wealth, of course, adorning yourself with the favors Allah gives you and to thank Him in that way, that is something different. But in effect, in practice, the same people who propagate this idea, oh look, Allah gave me, this is His barakah, so I put it on myself to thank Him. Good for you, right? But it shouldn't stop there, right? Your wealth was given to you as an amana. It doesn't belong to you, right? It's a favor that is given to you by Allah Azza wa Jal. And if you use that favor on just for your personal likings, your whims, right? And you don't use that money, that wealth Allah Azza wa Jal has given you as an amana on His believers, on the masakeen, on the du'afa, on the people who are suppressed, oppressed, tortured, You don't fund the activities of sadaqah in those lands, providing aid for them, and inshallah providing money for the mujahideen whenever they are, wherever they are, where they're fighting. If you don't do that, then you are a shame to the Muslim community. Your wealth is of no use to anyone. Right? Your wealth is of absolutely zero value to us as a community, and therefore you have not sought the pleasure of Allah Azza wa Jal. This is the primary economic principle of us Muslims earning money. This is why zakah is in place. This is why the sadaqah is in place. Right? So, in keeping your intentions pure, the Muslims, subhanallah, look at Abu Bakr. In the early days of Mecca, he would spend all of his money on freeing the Muslim slaves. He would pay money to kuffar to leave the Muslims alone. How many slaves have you freed with your wealth? Where do you stand in relation to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu? Where do you stand in relation to Uthman, the Ghani, right? How they serviced the Deen of Allah Azza wa Jal, where they were, they sacrificed every single penny, and we are so miserly with our wealth. We think 100 times, before we spend a single penny in the path of Allah Azza wa Jal and supporting the projects that support the Deen of Allah Azza wa Jal. It's an absolute shame. It's pathetic. And it reflects on us as a community, and it shows why we are in such a pain. It's because our wealth is only for our sake. We're seeking wealth for our own personal whims and desires. We're nothing but animals seeking self-pleasure. So remember this principle of wealth. Earn your money with the intention that you want to serve the Deen of Allah Azza wa Jal with this money. You want this money, this wealth, to be a source of the favor of Allah Azza wa Jal on you. The kuffar, they earn money, and this money, this wealth that they have will be used against them on the Day of Judgment, not for them. Likewise, your wealth, you'll be questioned on how you spent your wealth. One of the 5 things you'll be questioned on the Day of Judgment, right? SubhanAllah. So always bring back this principle in your mind. And this is the true essence of zuhd. Why you earn money is for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. Why you spend money is for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. And when you do this, when you earn money with this intention that you want to earn money for the sake of Allah, that you want to serve the Deen of Allah Azza wa Jal, you want to spend your money for the Deen of Allah Azza wa Jal, everything else will take care of itself. Your children will have food on their table. Your wife will have clothes on her, beautiful clothes on her body, to please you. All of that will take care of itself. But as a byproduct, as a result of your primary intention, that your wealth, your seeking wealth, is not except for earning the favor of Allah Azza wa Jal. Now, these are the primary economic principles that we must always keep in mind. That our wealth belongs to Allah. We earn this money to serve His Deen and to serve the Muslim community. If we're not using our money and we're not sacrificing every single ounce of our money for serving the Deen of Allah Azza wa Jal, then we are a shame to the community. And we should ask Allah's refuge from that. So revive this practice of the Sahaba to earn money for servicing the Deen. Your money should be used to serve the Deen of Allah Azza wa Jal. This is for this reason, because you have become so selfish that you've focused on earning money for yourself, that the governments can take advantage of you. But if you came together and formed your own venture funds, business, opportunity, the capital funds, where you then finance your functions, right? Everything that a government does for its people, if you came together as the wealthy Muslims and organize yourselves in a group which functions to serve the Muslim community and provides everything for the people, which the government does, like providing healthcare for the people, providing education for the people, providing employment for the people, providing water for the people, any of the projects that you can set up yourselves with your wealth, wallahi, people will not have to look to the government for their needs. They will come to you and you will be their leader, and Allah will revive the Deen through you. So wealth for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. Service the Deen with your wealth. Earn the money for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. And then, as is related with your studies, you can only seek knowledge for as long as your finances allow you to. The moment your finances run out, your studies are going to be hindered. They're going to come to a halt, and you're not going to be able to continue seeking knowledge and studying, right? So earning money, your own money, just enough for your studies is important. Is very important. And then you don't have to go all into wealth and dedicate your life to earning money. Of course, everyone decides their purpose. If you want to be an alim, inshallah, you want to serve the Deen of Allah through ilm, then the path is slightly different. Then the person who wants to serve the Deen of Allah with just his wealth, then the path is slightly different. Then there is a person who wants to serve the Deen of Allah through governance, judgment, being a ruler. That person, this path is, to be a leader in the community, like Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman. This path is going to be different. Now, this middle path and the first one described with the alim, they both have the common intersection of ilm. Both of the classes are going to study ilm to a very, very high level, right? But this middle class is also involved in the affairs of the people. They understand their economy, they understand the politics, they understand the sociology, the geopolitics of their region. They understand all of these things. They understand the psychology of the people, how the people think, the urf of the people of their land, and so on and so forth, right? And then the ulama are there for the shura, and these people become the leaders, right? And the ulama are always with them, right? Just like the khulafa rashidin. Now the khulafa were ulama, right? But Umar radiallahu anh, he would have his days where he would work, and then days when he would seek knowledge. Unlike Abu Huraira and some others who just stayed with the Prophet all the time, seeking knowledge. This judgment will always be there. But division will always be there. This is the taqseem of Allah Azza wa Jal, right? Now, in terms of fiqh, the fiqh is from Allah Azza wa Jal. Someone in the middle category could be a bigger faqih than a full-blown alim who is more factually filled up, and more resourceful in terms of his factual knowledge and access to books and so on and so forth. And then there could be a person who has a bit of necessary knowledge and he's fully involved in earning money and dealing with the world and so on and so forth, but he has enough knowledge that he can implement Islam in his daily life and guide the community that he's involved with, right? So every single class that I've described, all of them have a common, two common denominators. One, they all have at least a basic necessary level of knowledge of the Arabic language and the Aqeedah and Fiqh and the Quran. And then they all have a certain means of earning an income for themselves. And beyond that, the balance is given to decide where the person wants to go. If you want to be an alim, where people look up to you and you're resourceful for that reason, then your earning money is going to be less of a priority than serving the Deen of Allah. So you're going to accept some form of poverty. You're going to sacrifice a lot of pleasures in the world for the sake of seeking knowledge and becoming resourceful in that domain. Then someone who is going to seek knowledge and then become leaders of the community, they're going to balance the two in a way where they set up entrepreneurial activities, right? Their businesses run for themselves, and then they seek knowledge to a very high level, and they could become fuqaha, not to the same level as the first category, but they are super resourceful in that as well. But they have the capabilities now to understand the affairs of the people, and they can guide them. And then there is a community which works in support of the two, which supports the ulama in their studies as gifts, or buying books for them and so on and so forth, or funding their institutes, or they fund the state, or they fund the leaders who then carry out their activities in the society. Okay, we end this masterclass bi-idhnillahi ta'ala with the quote with a statement from Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah. Very famous lines of poetry. He says, أخي لن تنال العلم إلا بستة سأنبيك عن تفصيلها ببيان ذكاء وحرص واجتهاد وبلغة وصحبة أستاذ وطول زمان. He said, oh my brother, you will never seek knowledge, you will never attain knowledge except with six things. سأنبيك عن تفصيلها ببيان. I'll inform you of their details with complete expression and clarity. ذكاء, intelligence. حرص, motivation and this eagerness to learn. واجتهاد, and struggle and hard work. وبلغة, having enough financial means to continue your studies. وصحبة أستاذ, company of a faqih, a consistent company to an alim, someone who's a faqih, he understands the aqidah, he's a faqih, understands the fiqh of Islam, the Shariah of Allah Azza wa Jal, and he is mutqin in that. So suhbah, his company, is very important. And last but not least, a long time. Tulu zaman. You cannot seek knowledge in a short period of time. It is impossible, right? It is possible to attain certain targets in a given period, which is shorter than others, but that period itself you have to give that time to your studies initially, and then the more icing you put, the sweeter the cake will be, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. So the dhaka, the hirs and ijtihad, this is all your mind, body and soul, right? And bulgha is the financial means, right? Suhbat ustad is your community, and of course this you can sort of metaphorically understand with this your bond and your teaching and your instruction to your children and your family. So having that company between the learned and the learners, and then having enough time for this activity, subhanallah. So we finish this masterclass with that quote. May Allah bless you guys, and may Allah Azza wa Jal give us tawfiq and barakah in this journey that we are about to embark on. Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.